Welcome to all, and welcome to our public and our public out there in TV land. Well, we've had a lot of interesting events in Portland this week. Does anyone want to report what we went to as we gathered and say welcome?
Anybody? Know Your City did a tour this weekend with Groundworks Portland, with Thousand Years of Oregon Right to Survive, called The Dirty Side of Portland. And it was just looking at the Harbor Superfund site and the other brownfields and polluted areas that are kind of invisible in our livable city image. So it's
Great, thank you. How about, let's see, was it last evening's event? Was anyone able to attend? Sometimes we're not.
Earco, a minute, Earco?
Yeah.
I saw photos that Sonji had.
Yay.
Thank you, Kenya, for the notice about that. I tried to make
The notice came as soon as I got it. I look at that and look at the release.
Well, our next item is to look over the meeting minutes, and I want people to keep in mind that Sonji sent an update today about around 11:30 by email to us. So I hope you keep all of those bullet points that she sent in mind. Thanks for the leadership on that. Let's take a minute to look over the meeting minutes and see if we agree if something might have been left out or not noted properly.
Kate Lohr is not going to be here today.
That's right.
But we can keep the 9-year-old and family on there. I have a question.
Yeah, I had asked her, earlier in the day, I asked her to report in, but perhaps she hasn't had time to give us a report. So we may have to wait, that may be an email in the future.
Right, what I'm saying is I've got I can add an item on it, on that same topic.
Okay, great. Where should we add that in?
Same place, I think.
Thank you, Ian. I'm glad you have that information. I think we've all been wondering. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes if you've had time to look them over? Still looking them over?
I move to approve the minutes.
How many vote to approve the minutes? Opposed? Okay, minutes passed. And now we're going to have a report from OEHR, John T. James.
Good afternoon, everyone.
That's your lunch.
Thanks again to Kenny's for some good food. What? Because you can't hear me, I grabbed the mic. Just a couple of updates. Just left City Council just a few minutes ago and officially finalized the transfer of Title II and Title VI over to the Office of Equity and Human Rights, so it's done, and I think that's a huge win for the office and a huge win for the city, because I think we will be able to provide that office or that program with a lot more support and visibility than it has had in the past, certainly as it relates to Title VI. We are certainly moving forward with the Title II transition plan, identifying all of the physical barriers and things that are not ADA compliant in city facilities, with the expectation that that plan will go to city council for final acceptance in November, at which point there will be an official, if you will, start to the implementation of remedying many of the barriers that currently exist once they've been all finalized and noticed. So that's where we are with Title II and Title VI. If you didn't get a hold of my email or information about Ted Nugent yesterday, I'll give you the brief update, which is, I got an email yesterday, 2 days ago, from a woman who identified herself as a law professor. I've come to find out she's retired, but essentially saying Ted Nugent is coming, he's coming to the Expo Center. I think that's horrible to allow this man who spews such vile hate, etc., to be able to come to a public facility. And certainly a public facility that was where Japanese American citizens were housed. The dichotomy of that, or the juxtaposition of those two things, is just beyond what makes common sense and decency. So anyway, so I fired off an email to President Hughes, president of the Metro Council, because the facility is actually Metro. And so I fired off an email to him reiterating that. I didn't say cancel the concert. Purposefully, I didn't say that. But I suggested that he was able to use his influence and do something to address this concert coming to the city of Portland and reflect that the city of Roses is not one that supports or condones that type of message. Long story short, I sent the email to a bunch of electeds here, some other folks, and he received calls and emails, as did the manager of the Expo Center. And later in the day, and actually I don't know how the Oregonian got my email, but there was an article posted, one of the, Steve Duman is his name, posted an article about this. Actually, it was very supportive and well done. I have no idea how he got my email. And about 30 minutes after that article posted, I got a call from KPAM, Dave and Matt, or Dave and somebody, some morning show. So I did a brief interview on the morning show, and it was, they were supportive, which surprised me because it's the, who's the local Rush Limbaugh, what's his name? Lars Larson. Yeah, it's his station. So when they invited me to come on the station and I didn't answer, you could hear one of them was talking to the producers, talking to me in the background, say, "Tell him we're on our side, we're on his side." so I did the radio interview. Long story short, I received a response back from President Hughes of Metro, essentially saying, free speech. Lawyers say we can't do anything because we don't put political expectations on our venue, and if you don't like them, don't come. So I responded that I find it hard to believe that your lawyers haven't drafted into the boilerplate language of the contract and out to save Metro that would allow for exclusions based on either morality issues, of behavior or content that is, outside the bounds of what is appropriate, or actions that incite behaviors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and thanks, but I'm not going. And I haven't gotten a response from him, nor that I expect to. But I got a phone call from the manager, the GM of the Expo Center, who said he's had a really tough 2 weeks, and so has his staff. Because they've been getting lots of phone calls and emails about this event coming there. And none of his staff nor he are in support of that, but it's free speech, and he ran it up to his leadership and their attorneys, and he was told that he couldn't do anything. I said, well, okay. And here's my question to you. If you tell me that you would allow the KKK and Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam to come and hold an event in your center, then I'm done with this conversation. If you can't tell me that, then we're not done. And he said, I really don't know. I just then you have no policy that you're following in a consistent manner if you don't know the answer to the question, so we need to keep talking. And so I said, well, I'll give you a couple of days to decompress after the concert, and then we should meet again, we should meet. So that's kind of where it is. I will tell you, they got lots of phone calls from people like Senator Gordley and others who expressed their concern. You know, we can debate free speech all day, but it was a matter of raising the issue, starting the conversation about what is appropriate in a city, in a government-owned venue. So that was really what my purpose of the email was. I didn't, in the email, I asked that it be canceled. I said we need to try to do something about using your influence to address these matters. So anyway, that's where it is. I know that some stuff went around HRC, and I appreciate your efforts and support. It was late, last minute, because I didn't know he was coming until the day before he was coming. So as soon as I learned, I passed it along. So thank you for your efforts. I'll let you know what happens subsequently. That's the fun part of my job. I know Ashley had asked me about, and I don't know if everybody knows or maybe I mentioned it, the possibility of some type of tax credit program for businesses in the city that hire ex-offenders. And so I'm still kind of working my way through conversations about that. The mayor, as I said before, is very interested in the idea. And looking at Philly's model, Philly has an office in the mayor's office, a program that's an office of something that is a wraparound program that provides wraparound services to folks who were recently released from incarceration. And so they provide job training, they provide a number of things, and also in some sense certify that the people through their program are now job ready. And then they get calls from businesses that say we need 10 employees, and they can either interview them or trust the program and just accept who they get. And so when I talked to Philly, they said more often than not, they just get a call for bodies, and because they've done a good job in the past, the folks don't need to do interviews, they just send the employees to the company. The company takes them and they just do phenomenal. The key to this, or the telling statistic, was that in Pennsylvania, the recidivism rate is about 44%. But what he said was, those who have gone through the program and been hired, the recidivism rate is 7%. So you can't argue with that number, and clearly it speaks to the fact that if you want to reduce recidivism and improve community and improve just the health and well-being of folks, give them a job and a paycheck. And so it was just a huge, and that was what, that was all the mayor needed to see, quite honestly, was that statistic. And so I've met with some other folks to see how we could, maybe the city collaborate and use other services in the area that do some of this work. The VOA does job training, where Jay and Clean Slate do their thing. And so how can we kind of engage already nonprofits that are doing this, because we're not going to create a whole new bureau or agency to do this wraparound work. So anyway, so that's a lot of information, but that's kind of where we are still in the project, so we'll have to have a conversation. Right?
So the program we're talking about is city support offered, is it offered in the city support?
It's not offered at all yet, but
No,
it
I'm talking about the training and deployment.
that's what we're looking at doing. Right now, it's in Philadelphia has this program. So we're trying to figure out how to model a tax credit program for businesses in the city.
I was interrupted.
Okay.
But we don't have so you were talking there is a program is already offered right now for people who come now. It's not tax credits. I mean, employment and training that they have been working with employers.
No. Well, I can't say no. There are programs like the VOA, which is the Veterans of America, that does job training to provide assistance to help employ people. Clean Slate tries to do just that, clean people's records so that they can get a driver's license, so they can drive the job. So some do it sort of, but nothing as specific as what Philly is doing now.
So if there is, I know of a lot of programs that's running right now that does that,
Yeah.
employment and training for
But it's specifically wrap around.
ex-offenders called, ex-offenders.
Like what they're doing in Philly is wraparound services, so every type of service that somebody needs in order to become a citizen, that's what Philly is doing, that we might be looking for nonprofits that need the same.
Yeah, or some version. I mean, if you know of nonprofits or organizations that are doing some of that work, please call me and let me know.
Yeah, there is actually a federal grant called the reentry program,
Right,
specifically.
yes.
And there's a program I used to run through the college, basically, because when we make people come out, sometimes I find it is really too late. A program that we used to run it in CRCI here and in the one in Salem, and we were working with serious threat gang members. And that helps a lot, and we got a lot of success. And even inmates said that because when they come out, they find lost. Sometimes they end up in bad areas. They can go back because they have. So I will share with you
Please.
all if you need any information.
Yes, that would be great.
I'll share it. That's
That
fine.
would be great.
You mentioned that the mayor is interested in it. I mean, what is that?
It means he would love to be able to provide a tax credit program, and he has his ways of what that looks like. They're not getting money back, but,
Right.
but he has his ideas of how that could look. And so he's very much interested in, and honestly, it's kind of a competitive with Mayor Nutter and Philly trying to make good programs happen.
So I'm thinking with you've been attending some of the stakeholder, the VMA meetings and stuff, so I'm just wondering if there's connections there that
Yes.
would lead to other pockets of funding, not that it's just for blackmail, but we do know the disproportionality of inmates, and so I don't know if there's a connection. I mean, we'll be there on Saturday, I believe. So.
So I've raised it in small group, I haven't raised it larger.
Right.
So I think you're right, that would probably be a good opportunity to do that, because we're talking about implementation of it.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Great, thank you.
This is really exciting news, and I think it shows the fruits of the National Network Conference that we have here, here in Portland, and how we can use that network to find out what other cities are doing instead of reinventing the wheel. So once again, you see how valuable this network is. And I want to thank you for everything you do to make that conference happen, and everything that you do to strengthen that network so we can benefit from ideas from all of you.
So the only service that I know of in Portland really does full wraparound support is usually rehabilitation services like DePaul, et cetera. But I saw my mom going to DePaul and go to rehab, and I saw my dad going to prison and go back a lot of times. So just knowing that those wraparound services really do actually help people to not go back into actually real life and this society that we built in. I would say we should be looking into those and seeing what they do, particularly like PBT, which is kind of like the whole behavioral theory that actually helps. So,
And Emmanuel Price's organization, SCAFE, is not, he's not doing wraparound, but contributing to avoiding, yeah, recidivism, and so he just might have some insight. And I was just curious about the hiring in that Philadelphia project. Are they hiring immediately full-time, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, I take it back. It's either half or full-time. If they hire full-time, they get the full tax credit. If they hire half-time, they get half the tax credit.
It's not SNAP, is what I
No,
was concerned
no,
about.
no. It's a full-time job.
Right.
Somebody gets hired into. They have to be in, they have to commit to being part of the program for 3 years. And what he also said was that interestingly enough, of the, I forget how many companies are now part of the program, only about half of them have ever asked for the tax credit because they're so happy with the employees that they're getting and the social justice, good feeling and good work they're doing, they don't even ask for the tax credit.
Is there a way that I think oftentimes there are ways that people can ask for things, and I feel like if there were the business community that would mirror that, that's in Philly, that's experiencing this awesome feeling that doesn't require them asking for those tax credits, if there were a way for those folks to maybe talk to counterparts here in Portland, I think that would also drive and be a different push than it would from us, from Roy J, from, you know, Mother Boston, and Better People, like all the different groups who are already doing this work. I feel like it's a different lever to pull with Charlie. So I don't know if there were, like, I think like that could be an interesting conversation to host, whether it was not necessarily a webinar with a video things, if it, you know, something where if you key business leaders do something like that, that would be a different
I would add to that actually. I work with a lot of businesses, and I have been really advocating for three groups of people. We did ex-offender population, that's one of them, seniors, one of them, and non-native English speakers. That we oversee them, and we don't hire and we're calling for that. Anybody that provide this level, it's called employment and training in Portland, you tell them friendly, employer-friendly list, they will, you know what you're talking about, and they will have a list. We have even in my office a list, we call it friendly, employer-friendly list. It's all for who hires ex-offenders in Portland, BDX area. And there is no tax credits, nothing except good hearts. So we do have some, the problem is like, it's not coordinated, it's not city taking the lead on it, there is no benefit that can bring people more to listen to it. There is like no conference or nothing that says let's share best experiences and share these successes. There's nothing like that. It is just these organizations, and our college is going and approaching to educate people around these populations and ensure them that when we pay somebody from our organization, ensure you the follow-up even for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months success. As soon as they taste it, they hold it to it. So there is that it's called friendliness, employee friendliness.
I have a question back, actually going, on your previous topic around the TED meeting.
Yeah.
And really it's about the city of Portland and whether or not the city of Portland, if you've looked into whether or not it has policies in place that might give it the opportunity to act appropriately as something like Ted Nugent wants to speak for the facility, like a public park, to perform. Sort of remembering past years having had some controversy. I'm just not sure if that's true or not. I couldn't specifically think of it, but I'm wondering if that exists. Parks is probably the best example for me because we don't own stuff like that. But Parks is probably the most facility that's the most likely.
And I don't know, from what little I've looked into it just very, very recently, the state of Oregon has a very broad definition of free speech. And the courts have held very broadly about what free speech is. So that's why I focused on the language of contract as opposed to something else.
So yeah, it may have been a controversy.
Then finally, just as an FYI, regarding taxi companies and taxi drivers, something that I've been working on and with for a while now. There is a year ago, there was an implementation of new policies and regulations regarding taxi companies' treatment of drivers. Because the treatment of drivers, who happen to be mostly either Russian-speaking or African immigrant, the treatment is, and they're independent contractors, which is a different question. But I would describe it as abysmal in some sense, because they are technically independent contractors. If they don't show up for work because they're sick, and there are, the stories that the drivers will tell you will amaze you, not in a great way. But they could lose their job because they're in the hospital, because they're still required to pay what's called the kitty. At the beginning of the week, you start with a set amount that you owe the company in order to pay them for the services that they provide, dispatching, et cetera. You know, I have my own car. I have to pay the kitty. And so, even if I'm in the hospital, I need to pay the kitty. Or I just can get fired because I'm in a contract. So, and that's just one example of some things. So anyway, the regulations put a cap on the dollar amount of the kitty. They're not insured. Drivers aren't insured unless they're self-insured, or if they're not able to be self-insured, they're just stuck and having to go to work injured or sick or any number of things. So, long story short, the city put in regulations of how the drivers had to be treated before they could be given new permits and continue to be given their permits being continuously reauthorized. Yeah, thank you. So it's been a year, and so there's supposed to be a study done by it wasn't the Department of Revenue. It's now been moved to the Department of Transportation under Commissioner Noble. And so the study has not yet been done. And excuse me, there's still anecdotal conversations about how the drivers are being treated, whether they are not being fined for reasons that they can't sometimes understand. Okay, so the study's coming out. The question about what new permits will be allowed for companies is a big question. Based upon that study, there's a push by some drivers now to ask for a new company to be allowed in the city. The most recent company was, well, 15 years ago, it was Ethiopian. Most recently it was Union Campus. Where are they from? Not Somalia. It is Ethiopian. Green is awesome. Long day. So anyway, the conversation exists, and so I'm still in conversations with the drivers and with now the program as it's now in transportation, just to ensure that some of this moves forward. There's an effort and push that all the drivers will be receiving insurance, health insurance, so that they're covered. Some drivers are not covered with even, which surprised me. Some drivers don't have auto insurance. Don't ask me. At least that was my understanding. Maybe I misunderstood, but that's what I thought. So anyway, and there's also now the question as it relates to Uber wanting to come into the city. If you're familiar with Uber, and so their selling point is their convenience because they just have an app. But I just met with the owner of Green Camp, and they said now they have an app. So the companies, the taxi companies, are also now getting apps to do away with that disparity in convenience, if you will. And so his issue was, as long as they are subject to the same policies and requirements as a taxi company, he would be okay because he could give them convenience for convenience. But I don't know that all the taxi companies have that convenience, so that would be the question. So anyway, do something on the horizon.
Can I just suggest, I'm wondering if there's some coordination that should happen with sick time.
But they're not employees.
Well, that's the thing, but if they're contract, and I'm wondering if that's something in the reevaluation of the law, the sick time law, that could be addressed.
By definition, an independent contractor isn't going to be covered by sick leave.
Would it do more harm than good to have them become employees instead of?
Now you're going to step into it.
It would be.
The companies don't want them to be employees because then they have to pay in the workers' comp, they have to pay insurance, they have to pay a number of things. And so the drivers, depends on who you talk to, I mean, the Green Cab, Union Cab are co-ops. I mean, they're company owned. I mean, they're driver owned company. So it's a very different model than the you work for me and you're the boss and you, it's your company. And so my understanding is, and I've tried to get the city attorney to find this out for me, was that there was a case that went to Boley about whether they were in fact drivers or independent, or work employees or independent contractors. And I don't want to misspeak. I thought Boley made a decision and it went now to court of appeal. And so I don't know where it is in that process. And I've asked a bunch of folks and nobody knows the answer to the question. So I'm gonna see if I can find out if in fact it's still in the courts and or where it is in the courts. Because that will make a huge answer to the question regarding insurance and those health insurance and sick days and other things.
If they're subject to fire,
Well, as an independent contractor, fired, I can let you go by contract. So anyway, just something on the radar for you, looking for something to dig into.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. I, not too long ago, actually, just an anecdotal piece, I was in need of a taxi ride to the airport, and the gentleman who was supposed to be the driver that day was in the passenger seat because his partner just died the day before, but he couldn't afford to not go to work. And so he had a colleague drive for him, and it was just devastating to hear this personal story of loss and that he had absolutely no protection afforded him because of his status, and that this was his life. He wasn't even given 12 hours to process the loss and had to come to work. And thankfully he had a colleague who was able to step in on his day off and drive for him, and they kind of did this thing without telling the management. That's good that they came together, but it was just very, very sad.
I actually wonder, I mean, I feel like having you come and deliver these things is always great because we get to hear of other things or connect to things that we see happening, but is there also a place or a space where you feel that HRC and whatever kind of muscle we do have, which unfortunately is not the biggest, but where there is something, where there is an action item or even something strategically that we can plan for, like as these things are occurring, is it a letter of support, is it showing up and speaking about it at the commission meeting that's going to be occurring, or something like that, so that we can help also drum up whatever at least our main goals would be.
No, absolutely, and that's what I would suggest in terms of taxi issues, because it'll have to go to the city council.
Right.
So whenever that comes, I would certainly ask for your support, review of the issue and your decision as to what kind of support you'd like to make.
And you said Novix is currently in Novix?
Yes, yes. You know, as for the tax credit program, it's more of, you guys have networks, folks and companies and organizations that I don't sometimes. So being able to tell me who I can talk to is really why I raised it, so I could get your expertise. Give me some folks who I might be able to talk to or brainstorm this with. Because I really just want to go back to the mayor with some type of proposal. And say, here's how we can do this in the city without needing our own budget to do A, B, C, and D, but we can engage with an MOU with, an agreement with, other organizations. And finally, I just want to thank Linda very much. I know she's stepping down from the position of vice chair, and I just really want to say thank you to you because you are everywhere and you represent well and you do a phenomenal job in your role. I just want to say thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and I talked to a couple of our members, and I decided to stay on as an HRC member, stepping down as vice chair. It was getting a little too stressful for me, and I apologize for the drama queen behavior. We all get to have a turn at that now, so we'll move on because we have an important guest today, and I want to make sure that Mr. Whitten has it. Mr. Whitten, we're sorry. You have your full time, and the rest of us will have to talk very quickly later in the meeting. We apologize for being late.
Good afternoon, Human Rights Commissioners. My name is Cameron Whitney. I am a Portland resident of 5 years, economics student at Portland State, board president at Know Your City, and I sit on a number of civic and governmental committees in the Portland area. Today I'm here to talk about a proposal called the Center for Human Rights. The idea is to form a cultural institution that elevates stories of social justice and preserves the legacies of marginalized communities within the Portland metro region. There's a document, it's pretty much a Bible, it's very long. So parts that are in there I'm not going to cover today because we do have limited time, but I just want to cover some basic, frequently asked questions, the progress work that we're doing, and leave enough time for a dialogue here with questions and answers. So basically, what's central to our proposal here is a physical center, and the idea behind that is looking at our value in terms of having a long-term institution that preserves these stories. I think there's a lot of support here for culture and education. Unfortunately, what we have in the Portland community is a lot of support for what's sometimes considered to be mainstream. And we have, just through my personal travels specifically, seeing within other areas with more diversity that value, that support for the stories, for the visibility of marginalized communities, how that's really shaped them in terms of how they advocate, how they vote, who they live to, who they live next to, who they talk to. And we believe that culture also transforms us here. So we like the idea because it gives us physical space, it gives us the ability to have more visibility, to impact the social fabric, and to also rely on earned revenue as a nonprofit. So, looking at long-term sustainability, looking at making this a long-term institution that people can identify when they're out on the street, when people come to visit, they can see it and they can be exposed to all the stories that we have as residents. In terms of how do we support that kind of institution, we have a lot of support for culture and arts here. There's a lot of dialogue currently about how do we become more equitable as a community. That's something that we are currently having a conversation with. Here in Multnomah County is a great example because we already do fund the Oregon Historical Society, and the idea is to continue supporting that as a county. So we're already talking with the county and the Historical Society. One of our advisory board members, Senator Abel Gorley, she's also supportive of our movement and helping us facilitate that conversation. So we are looking at public and private partnerships to really support the work that the center aims to do. In terms of the progress that we are involved in right now, we have a really fantastic board, 6 people currently, and we have 2 of them in the room today that can do their hands, Ryan and Janine in the back. They've been amazing support systems in terms of, all the conversations that we're already starting with the community and really visioning how do we get this to the next level. And I really appreciate that they're here today. We also have an advisory board of 8 people, which is also in the document, you can do that. And some of these are, very visible leaders who've done social justice work, who also believe in what we have proposed for the Center of Human Rights, and are helping us with their names and their connections to really get this moving forward. And the reason why I present to you guys is because we are ready to take the next step forward, and we view the Human Rights Commission as an essential partner in making this work. We've already started conversations with the mayor's office, and those have also been very positive. And the idea is that you guys also have the passion and capacity to help us have some conversations. We have, programs committee, speakers bureau. The idea is that we want to be as community-led as possible. So definitely with your experiences, we can make that happen. Also in terms of getting endorsement letters, so that when we do present to City Council, when we do talk to partners like the PDC, we'd love to have your support with that as well. I think that's pretty much all I have to say right now. If you guys have any questions, please feel free. Yeah, so, we are looking at doing, in terms of both grassroots funding and also, we're looking at grants. We have a development committee, and we're making our first meeting on Monday, so we are working on grant writing. And ideally, we are looking to have a board of 12 to 15, and we've been growing this the entire summer. And definitely by the end of the summer, we'll probably have, at least 2 or 3 more board members. And people come from a lot of great experiences, small business owners, professors in architecture and design, people with legal backgrounds. We are really looking to, have a functioning board that really helps us move in that right direction. We are also aiming to do a crowdfunding campaign next year in January. And we are looking to really start the conversations now, getting people supported, getting the dialogue out there. We've been meeting with reporters for different newspapers. So we are really starting that timeline right now. And we're working with a local nonprofit called CAUSET, and they're doing our business financial plan. And that's helping us to see really what is our target that we need to leverage to make this happen. But then, as I said before, we are also looking at public and private partnerships. Those conversations are happening too.
It's very exciting.
So I do think that this will help us shift our value system towards humans and life versus currency. When I first heard about this, I looked up other centers, like the Elevator Center for Human Rights down in Oakland.
Yeah.
And they use their space for events, they use it for media, they use it to have conversations or have concerns met. Do you have a plan about what you hope this center would do and look like? What else?
That actually is nailed right on the head. One thing that we really try to step away from is the term museum. I think museum, at least for me personally, is very antiquated, and we're looking to do more than just what's historic. We want to be cutting edge. We want to be looking at contemporary issues. We really want to be helping to drive change. We want to be able to have wraparound programs that invite people to space. That means speaking events, trainings, conferences, all other things that we can also do. So the idea is, how do we be active in the community? How do we partner with other organizations that are directly advocating? That was what makes us a center.
I'm glad you're changing that, because for a lot of our approaches, we don't elevate to the level of a museum. Museum is something for us that is here. It doesn't come to us. So I'm glad that you are probably moving from that. Another thing, sometimes come and approach us if some part of financial from us. Sometimes we don't know. We may have some.
You have a card?
No, I mean, let's go. Another person, if you're recruiting, I just, for a year and a half, we tried to meet, and I connected with this lady, and she has, from mid-80s to mid-90s, has been a war journalist in war action, and from mid-90s to now, she has been in an international human rights lawyer. And she communicated to the metro area, and they have been talking to her about being involved, and she has a strong interest to be involved. I think it would be a great idea to see how you can involve her with you. She's very creative, there's a mentality, and you have a lawyer as well involved with you. She knows very, very well about human rights issues. So, this is hopefully my email with the human rights.
Yeah, I can give you a copy.
to you with perfect. Thank you. So,
When we met with, who was looking to become a commissioner.
Nicole.
You should get your measurement call as well. See what the hands say.
I have a question. So I know you kind of mentioned a lot about the diverse history and having a multicultural approach. Do you have a lot of the things in color having pushed out to like East Portland? Do you have a location in mind?
Yeah, thank you. For that situation specifically, in terms of how do we serve the community, the idea is that we want to be accessible for the metro area. And so at the same time, the idea is that we're raising visibility, especially for people who live in certain areas of Portland that go underrepresented. The idea is that we are raising those voices and doing cultural empowerment, but we are really trying to make sure that people who live within Portland area, who come here to work, and people who also come here to visit, they are exposed to that. So that's why we are talking with different commercial realtors. We are out here meeting with PSU and other people who have spaces in the centrally located area, because that's ultimately where we find it's going to be most accessible for, people to come and see what we have.
So you're saying downtown is a preferred?
Yeah, it's downtown, central east side.
I just wanted to say that this is a really exciting idea. And when I go to the tourist center in Pioneer Square, and I go underneath, and I see that we have a colorful brochure about, that includes Chinatown and the MLK statue, and I'm looking at that and thinking, we need more substance to reflect the substance that has been here in the past, and to honor all the work that has been done by every community in this town. And as I took the bus tour, I saw that we were scratching the surface of the greatness that has been hidden away or half forgotten, or just because it didn't have a place like this to be honored. So this is very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, in the background statement, there's some examples, and I feel bad because I think that we have like a little critical dialogue about it, but there's samples like there's markers on the yellow line for Vanport and for Japanese internment, and like we have the Gateway Plaza, and other examples of markers that exist. And for us, the concern is where's the access? I think it's easy for people to be able to walk past them. It's hard for people to get to them. There's very little context for a lot of these markers. And we believe in our community, this visibility is important. It really has the opportunity to shape the understanding and the stories that people get when it comes to who lives here.
I was going to say, you specify that one of the reasons for the center is because of the lack of access. So what is the plan around actually having community members be able to attend or see? Is your structure that people would pay ticket prices, or what are you going to do to break the barriers that currently extend when we see what little bit we do actually have now?
Yeah, so the idea is that we do want to have earned revenue that will be beneficial for the sustainability of the organization. In terms of access, I think that another great example are institutions like the Urban League or the Scanner, who donated a lot of their archives, and those archives are currently in storage. So I think the issue is that there isn't even a real way for people to even get to see this. So we want to really create a physical center that people are able to identify easily and are able to get to and spend time in, and for there to be staff or volunteers who can actually talk with them and start dialogue. Currently, none of that really exists. And so that's what we mean in terms of access, the fact that there is information. We want to be able to consolidate in a place where people know that they can go to get it. It's really hard for that to be done.
Right. I would encourage, I guess, as you build the business plan, to look at standard barriers that any museum, center, or something like that does put up. I mean, I think the opportunity of hosting other events at said place is going to break down, because then there's a reason for people to be there, but those events typically also have ticket prices. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you were to come at it and look at it from a different vantage point around how do we engage people that hasn't been, because you do need something that's sustainable for the center, but you also want to make sure that those who haven't been able to come and see, that there's some way, and I don't have the answer. I guess I'm just saying, as you guys do the work.
Like OMSI, the Art Museum, they do free things, and I think there's issues that we need to do to mitigate lack of access when it comes to having financial requirements. So I think that there's a balance I'd love to be able to explore as well.
And I think also, outside of just looking at like free or reduced days of the week or month, there are other models that could look like, hosting particular things there that require that folks would be there, whether they're classes or something like that then would exist there. And so it's not just that you have to come down on the fourth Sunday from 1 to 5 kind of thing, which also can be a barrier because a mother may work every Sunday, and then that's never been an option for her. So, as you guys are building your business plan, I just look forward to seeing additional ways that are really spelled out around how we are breaking other barriers. And I think Portland is a perfect place to do
something like that.
Well, I'll just real quick. So this is reminding me of one of the most profound things that Colombians I worked with, quite displaced Colombians, I worked with would always say, we have to remember our past to see our future. And they were exquisite activists in redefining their own livelihood. And what really excites me is having a place where there's trainings for tools for change, organizing, and so because it's beautiful that you're linking the past with what's happening now in dialogue and advocacy. So that's part of the most exciting part for me. Look forward to seeing what comes forward with that.
Have you been to the Seven Wiesenthal Institute of Tolerance in Los Angeles?
No, but I heard that there was a Lutheran church, no, Methodist church in Los Angeles that created a social justice museum.
Well, this is similar to the Simon Wiesenthal Institute.
Can you repeat the name?
Simon Wiesenthal Institute of Tolerance, and it's similar to what this is here, and has what you say. It has the leading diversity training for law enforcement in the country. And outside of that, they also have a museum and they do a lot of training there. And they have some things set up, structures, or I don't know what the word is, where you walk in, and so they have where a boycott where people sit at the lunch counter.
Model of it.
So they have a lunch counter, right? So they have that. And then they have other, so they have other things throughout history. And then they use those things to kind of teach you and educate you. So if you haven't had the opportunity to visit the Simon Wiesenthal Institute of Tolerance, it's in New York, and there's one in Los Angeles.
Museum.
Yeah, Museum of Tolerance, I highly recommend you do that, because it has a lot of the same things are in here that exist there currently.
Actually, I know we're running out of time, guys. Have you looked into, and how are you coordinating with other folks in town that are doing some of the same kind of stuff? The example I can give is Oregon McCain Legacy Center.
Yeah.
And I think there are probably others too. Have you guys reached out to them and kind of explored?
So one of our board members, Simon Tam, he's done a lot of work at the Legacy Center, so we talked about that a little bit. And so I think, NICU Legacy Center and also Oregon Youth Example are the closest examples of having physical space in terms of the programs that we are aiming to do, because we're really looking at multicultural, the intersection of a lot of marginalized identities. I would actually say Know Your City is probably really close because the way that we do our programs. And so we want to have conversations with all these organizations and have them as partners. I've met with a number of different groups, both who do cultural work, but also who do local advocacy. So we want to have enough people involved that help us get everyone on the same page.
But, so, I think this project has a goal, and it does have a direct relationship to our work, and I think that we would really benefit from it existing, and plan for it to be built is in, what, 2 years?
Yeah, that's a moving target right now.
Yeah, well, 2-3 years. I think that it would be wise of us to have a focus on it, maybe a task force or a liaison that actually gets in the minutes that shows that we're tracking progress of this and helping support citizens. So I guess I would entertain a movement to create a task force. Like to say I'm moving. Yeah, I'm moving to.
Can I ask you a question? Just in lieu of how many task forces there are, I wonder if there would be, right, outside, maybe a liaison is what it looks like, but I think it would be great if, Cameron, you were to say, these are the 3 things outside of the letter of support, the commission participation, or committee participation, excuse me, where you know that such a task force would even be relevant, right? So instead of just having folks that meet to talk about something or maybe get an update from you, because I think you could essentially just come, you know, maybe once a quarter and give us an update, and that could suffice. But I wonder if there are other things that you could see direct work being moved on that then would identify a reason to put a task force together.
Yeah, I think there's a
I mean,
lot.
and if not, maybe it is just an update or something so that we can move forward with different action items or something. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of work, and I didn't want to, because if I spent time talking about that, I'd probably be here for half an hour. And so, and I'm willing to do that next month if you guys want me to. But so yes, I think there would be room for there to be a liaison from the Human Rights Commission. And, you know, if somebody is willing to take that role on, we could definitely find a way to continue that conversation, because it's something that I can't answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, I understand. So maybe what's a name for a liaison versus
Move for a liaison. I move for a liaison, or two even, but I'm willing to be that person that keeps us updated on this.
Second.
all in favor of Diallo being a liaison.
It's been moved and seconded that we offer this new center a liaison at this point. How many people are really in favor of that?
Oh, can we amend that to go ahead and do it in one motion, that Diallo be that liaison right at this
Yes,
point?
and that Diallo be that liaison, thank you. How many vote for that? How many say yes?
Aye.
Opposed?
Everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody knows.
Except
Malloy and Sam. And,
Oh, Malloy
I
did,
don't know.
Sam.
I do? Okay. I'm not saying raise your hand if you don't feel that urge.
Get your hands up! You're Sam.
Have to do what?
Thank you,
Just raise your
Diallo.
eyebrow.
Thank you
see
so much.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing about all your activities
Appreciate
in
that.
the future. This is
I
very
should leave my
exciting.
card for people.
For the center.
Okay, we have used up a lot of time on some very important matters, and we're moving on to item number 5, the immediate business. Amy has a report from Kate Moore and our 9-year-old young lady and her family. How are they doing?
Okay, so I make it clear, I guess, I don't have a report from Kate Moore, I just have something about this topic.
Okay.
And it's, I'm hoping Alan can still hear me.
Thank you.
So, the only thing I have on the 9-year-old is the fact that the law enforcement committee is interested in contributing to the work group that the police bureau put together on redesigning the juvenile directive. So I've just been communicating with Alan to hear what he knows, because he was approached by a member of the bureau for CPRC participation. That's just the update. I don't know if Alan has anything else to add to that.
I don't. I haven't heard anything else about what is exactly the CPRC work group is gonna do with that. So that's what I know, unfortunately. And I saw that in Captain Walsh's most recent communication to CPRC that he's not gonna be on CPRC.
No.
No,
So I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't know.
He's leaving.
no, he got, I think he got a new position as a chief
Yeah.
in California.
Yeah, it's good.
So we'll have to find that maybe why he hasn't responded to.
Okay.
But I don't, so I will work to, also, you might also in your role, try to find out the police, you might also be able to find out from the police bureau directly what opportunities exist for public input of any kind.
Well, there was a public input process, and I think that's over.
Right,
But
and I'm wondering if, my assumption was that there was more.
I'm more interested in, that's a good idea, I'm not more interested in the more human rights body role in giving some feedback to she was gonna
Yes.
report on, so,
Mhm.
yeah, she did, I don't know.
There's a lot of support coming from her specifically on that. And also, for this event during 4th of July, the mom of the 9-year-old came to basically give information about how she felt about it, and there was a lack of, she said that there was a lack of policy that keeps a foot on the kids' necks, basically. That the officers never gave an apology to her or the mom, and that the 9-year-old is a straight A student, and so it's kind of like odd that this is happening to her. So
I'm wondering if we need a little news update. Does everybody know what is being talked about?
Somebody not know.
Does anybody not know?
Why are we doing
We
these?
just been talking.
And the other part of it that I'm not sure is, you know, that the second piece of it is that the family was evicted from their home based on, my assumption was it was based on the events that occurred relative to the police action. And that was, yeah.
I heard it was, yeah, I heard through our emails that, police officers of the police of Portland's Bureau helped influence that eviction.
Who did you hear that from?
Oh,
So
enlighten us.
what I heard, yeah, this is all hearsay, right, is that because the family was living in a home forward, establishment or housing community, home forward has a policy around police interaction, and that extends to every family member who is registered as a resident in that home. And because the daughter had this police contact, the policy essentially says when that occurs, then the family is subject to eviction. I don't know if the mom got to engage in any sort of a process to seek appeal or anything, but then I heard from Kate that her congregation and a neighboring congregation had gotten together to try and rehome the family, and that they were successful in rehoming the family in an apartment complex in Southwest Portland, and this is the place that the mom wanted to live. She felt like it was a safer neighborhood and that her daughter would be less subject to the narrative about what had happened that led to all this police contact, and that she kind of get a clean slate to start in school and making new friends out there.
Sorry, actually, this is reminding me now that exactly what happened. Because you're exactly right. There were, on Joanne Harsey's cable show, she had the mother and daughter on and was talking about the specific events that actually led to the eviction summons. And I apologize. It wasn't the police action related to the daughter. There was actually another police action that was related to another family member of that household that actually caused the eviction. The intersection point was the same officers that had arrested the 9-year-old daughter, or took into custody the 9-year-old daughter, were the same ones that came to evict the family. But they were evicted because of the home forward policy, and Joanne's show was about that. It was really stunning, actually. I put some notes on it and listened to it. That there is a Multnomah County court proceeding around eviction that is pointedly unfair to the people being evicted. And there's not a fantastic amount of due process as part of that. So it was really enlightening when it showed those. But those are the circumstances around. And we should just rattle off the family's name, and I know some people here know it.
It's the
Yeah, and
police.
I was just gonna say, let's be sure not to share the daughter's name.
I think it has been.
I know, but
Okay.
that's my recommendation and actually request.
Okay.
I don't think we need to.
Police showed up to exercise.
I'm assuming.
There was a bunch of questions about even that, because typically home forward delivers their own evictions, and they tack them up on the door. And in this case, Portland police were called to deliver an eviction, and in the function of our city, the sheriff's department is the go-to entity for delivering of any sort of public notices. So there were questions, and I think media and the public started to wonder if this was retaliation on the police's part, because they don't typically deliver eviction, so why were they there? But now it's all coming back to me that because this was an adult interaction, there was some concern about safety for the Home Forward staff who would have to deliver the eviction, because it was an adult interaction, and so they called the police to have a
So they basically
safety,
had
as a safety measure for the Home Forward staff.
So she lived at the villa, right?
Yeah.
So, so I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there's a meeting that happens at the Columbia Villa. I'm not sure if it's weekly or monthly, but they discuss a lot of the residents that live there. And I know because I've been a part of the meeting, because of the parks.
And the two officers.
Yeah, and the officers are there as well, and are part of this meeting. So they, similar to this, they have a meeting, they discuss, you know, who's got what going on, what kind of issues and stuff like that. What happens going forward from there as far as how the eviction process goes, I don't know firsthand, but I don't, you know, I don't think it's just, you know, it's one bad deal and you're out. I would assume, and I don't know for sure, that if they decided to evict her, the villa has police officers that are assigned to it. So there's an office right across from McCoy Park where 2 police officers are assigned, and actually this is around the corner from where this meeting takes place. So if they decided to evict, whatever family they decided to evict, they may or may not use the police to go over there and deliver the notices if they don't feel safe. But that's a lot of assumption. And I think one of the things, and I heard, you know, I think we really need to be careful in making assumptions and hearsay about what we heard or what we think happened, if we don't really know. Like, you know, no matter who we hear it from, secondhand, whether it's Joanne or somebody else saying, well, this is what happened. I think we should, as a body, we should do our due diligence to reach out to the villa, the organization, to ask them, maybe have them come and talk to Home Forward about their process. You know, who's a part of it? How do they go about doing that? Who delivers those notices? What was the situation in this case, right? Because I've sat in some of those meetings and I've heard some things that, you know, that people have done over a period of time that have led up to their eviction. It wasn't just a one deal thing. So I don't know what happened, but I think that's a little overview of kind of what happens. And so I think we should, if we want answers, we should reach out to hear from them, you know, rather than the hearsay, because, you know, the hearsay just puts them in a bad light, and we don't know what happened.
So I reached out to Home Forward specifically, and I spoke with a couple of people there about policy and about how they enacted and if there was any wiggle room in that policy or an appeals process for the parent. And I got back the information that I shared with you guys. And Kate also reached out to the police department to find out why the same 2 officers were sent to that scene who had, after the mother had asked to be sort of not reapproached by those same officers. And she never told me exactly what came out of that conversation, except that there was an issue around safety for the Home Forward staff, and that was the reason why they just kind of was a random luck of the call, maybe, or at least that's what they're saying. So I hope you don't get the impression that anyone's saying that, yeah, it was totally harassment by the police, because while the media and some of the public might be saying that, it sounds to me like the HRC position is that it is not the case, that it might have just been a bad luck of the draw at the time. So what Kate's group did was they essentially said, well, hey, it's okay, there's no need to push forward to keep you here, when the mom had missed the appeal deadline. And there's a whole, you know, a myriad of reasons why a person would miss a deadline to appeal when they're looking at being homeless. And so rather than stay and fight it, that's where they decided, the mom decided that she would just move on to a different place.
Do you have the information about the whole process?
The whole eviction process?
Well, not just for that, for that family, but the whole process that Home Forward uses there.
They
policy.
didn't give me anything physical, but the person that I spoke with explained the process to me over the phone. So,
I guess one of the things, at least in this part of the story, that's concerning to me is the use of Portland Police to deliver an eviction notice. An eviction notice is not, it doesn't require that level of service. And the other thing is, if there's a safety concern, there's a provision in Oregon law that allows a notice to be served by mail. So if they needed to serve, you have 30 days, 20 days, 15 days, whatever notice they're serving, and they wanted to serve it without confronting the parent or running the risk of confronting the adult, they could have done that without use of the police. So that's something that, from a housing standpoint, that I would be interested in learning more about. Like how often do they resort to this?
what Kate told me about it was that it was a matter of time, because the mother got the notice on a Friday, and they needed to be out of the house the following Monday. So the timeline for the eviction was very, very curt. And
Right, well then,
that might be the reason why there was no mailing of it, or.
So, I'll try to be brief, but the notice is the first thing that starts everything. And they're different, depending on why you're giving the notice. It can be a day, it can be 3 days, it can be 30 days, and there's some in between. So that is just delivered from the landlord to the tenant. It can be delivered in person, it can be mailed, or if the lease allows, it can be posted and also. And then the time runs, and once that time period's over, if the person hasn't left, then you go to court. Then the sheriff will serve those papers on the family, and that is done by the Multnomah County Sheriff. Then there's a hearing in court. If the tenant loses, the judge orders a day that they have to vacate. If they don't vacate, the landlord can go to the sheriff to get a writ. I think it's called a writ of execution or something like that. And then the sheriff comes back and says, okay, family, you need to come out. The landlord's going to go in and change locks. But it's the county sheriff that does that, not the Portland Police. So the Portland Police, from what I'm hearing, they were involved in that first step of delivering the notice over safety concerns, because the Home Forward didn't want to do it. And that is a bit troubling, because that's fairly aggressive.
So I wonder, is Home Forward, because these folks are in a Home Forward deemed property location establishment, typically, I think those places then negate a lot of what you're talking about, because what you're talking about.
They still have to
sounds
go through the same court process to get the
Do they?
people out.
They're still-
Well, because clearly that process that you're describing was not
Right.
what it seems to have been, and that takes a while, believe me.
Yes.
It's a long time.
This is a really important issue. I want to spend more time on it, but I'm wondering if we could go to a meeting.
Well, I was
Because
gonna
we have
suggest
so many things.
There's a lot of us working on this in different individual capacities. What I would love is for those of us who've been interested in it and been trying to track it, come together, and maybe it's just an email thread, or there is a meeting where we put all the pieces together and identify, do we want to move forward with an inquiry, and what is that gonna look like?
Yes, and also at to what ends? Because you have to consider that the family is now trying to start over, and it seems like they're kind of pushing away from the spotlight. So if we're going to put this sort of effort in, to what end, to make a recommendation
Start
to
vetting.
the county, because Home Forward is a county entity, it's not a city entity. So,
I think part of that inquiry would be to the family. What if anything, are they interested in having?
Well, it sounds like maybe what Kenya is saying is that they're interested in just getting away, starting new, but I think what's important from an HRC perspective is maybe what we can do to protect others from having to move.
Yes,
So outside of maybe stating and just verifying that she would in fact like to remain as apart from this as possible so that they can move forward, what can we do to ensure that this doesn't occur again? So that would be to what end?
What I would say, because similar what was mentioned earlier, we're operating in a lot of assumptions. For me, is when we don't just invite move forward and ask this question, what's your process? Just learning about, not investigating, just learning about the process, or we email it to us, or whatever. What is your process around eviction or people not paying in your operating center? Another assumption, because I know Home Forward, before when we built the Villa, we entered in a contract with police departments to provide 2 officers or an officer to be full-time there. How much percentage or guess you will give me if somebody asks for law enforcement, the same officer, the same 2 officers will show up? It's given, the same officers will show up. So we need to understand also what the roles of those officers, or what's happened if somebody in the eviction place, who comes. So from the process, what's really important for me, I was hoping to learn today, is really, this is a crucial part, but for me, what's happening with the issue of 9-year-old? Where are we in it? What are the results? That's feel like we are starting up to do it, putting on hold and seeing something new. No, I really want to know, not even today, future possible. And I know you would have on it, and you're approaching the funding, etc. And the support is, because I got a little bit confused, who is calling who from our commission, and which name you are calling around. So if we can coordinate and know, am I calling this family because Abdul, I'm calling them about education or tuition because of the college, or I'm calling them because I'm a commissioner, and she's calling them as a commissioner. Also, so if we can coordinate, will be also a good suggestion. So that's my what is easy way, call somebody to tell us what's your business, if there is any people involved in your process. And then we'll go from there, if there are any holes.
So shall I send an email out to those who are interested in looking into this some more? And who's interested, want to be?
I don't want to say I'm not interested.
I understand.
But I would still say, when you put the email out, to maybe find out who's interested and what are the intended outcomes, what are the outcomes that you guys want to get. Because if there's varying outcomes, you might want to be able to hone it down to some specific outcome. And I would also suggest that it fall under those 3 pillars of proactivity, protection, or what's the third one? I'm drawing a blank. Give me a second. The third P.
Protection.
Prevention.
Or what was it?
Prevention?
Prevention, yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful. So,
And just what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to prevent, be proactive?
okay, and so before I comment to that, but what are any other folks interested in working on this, Sam? Were you?
No, not really. I have too much on my plate, but I mean, I'd be interested, like Bree was saying, just like, it'd be good to understand what their policy is and going forward to make sure that this doesn't happen. If something bad did happen, that it doesn't happen to other people.
Anybody else?
So.
Yeah, okay. So,
Amy, I'm interested if there are policy implications. I'm also, there are a number of things that have come to the Public Policy Committee, so I would like to add this if there's serious direction, but I'm personally not interested in having worked with a lot of families who've gone through that. I don't want to further traumatize. If people want to move on, they want to move on, so I don't want to bother them. But if there's a way to protect by changing abusive policies, I'm happy to do that.
and what I would imagine is that I wouldn't want to determine what of the 3 Ps, which I think are great, that I would recommend the outcome be. I'd want these folks to work on that decision with me. So I don't know that my email will say what the outcome would be, but that would be first order of business.
You got the email. I don't
Okay,
have to
no.
work on it, I'll just,
You are here, okay.
yeah, I'll work.
Thank you, great.
Do we have mayor staff visit next? Were we reporting on that from the executive committee, or were we expecting Diana to come tonight? Maybe she'll come next time.
I missed what you said.
I'm saying we're on
Diana Nunes.
Diana Nunes coming from the mayor's staff.
Were we expecting her?
This
That
is,
was
no,
next
we
week.
weren't expecting her.
The next
This was a
one.
report out from the executive
There you go.
committee about the visit that Diane made to the executive committee. That's what that was.
Okay, is there someone prepared to do that?
Maybe Al.
We had a visit from Diana Nunez from the mayor's staff, who is beginning to do some work around equity issues on behalf of the mayor. So it was fantastic. You know, we've been asking for a meeting with the mayor individually, and I think she's helping us set up some, both individually with the mayor and as part of the update that goes from the office to the mayor and the commissioners. So we talked about, boy, now it's, you know, things are so fuzzy. We talked about several issues and several items with Diana, so it was fantastic to have somebody that we continue to have contact with in the mayor's office. You know, we've been working with Josh, Albert, and Chad in the mayor's office, so she was another point of contact that has a high level of interest in issues around equity. Met her, she was also on the newer advisory group office. Yeah.
Yeah. And she graciously greeted us this morning when Alan and I were at council. And we'll have a report on that all this next.
Talk about
Excuse me, Alan, I didn't mean to talk over voice over you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to voice over you, but I'm just at a loss for what we talked about with her.
One of the things that,
I'm looking to see if I have my executive
Go.
committee.
one of the things that came up was, the mayor's office is hoping that we will work with them on, and it's listed, it's not described properly here, but it's the blackmail.
Initiative.
Initiative.
Yeah.
Yeah, the BMA.
Yeah.
And another
Hold on,
piece
no,
was the DOC, the DOJ agreement.
Yeah.
And the last piece was that, they're hoping to give us time with the mayor, FaceTime with the mayor. And where we have landed so far is that Dante has, check-ins with the mayor monthly. And so what we would do is we would get on his agenda and we would come in at the end of his check-in with the mayor so that we have that time with the mayor and with council. And that would happen maybe quarterly, on a regular basis. The next one will be, I believe, September 11th. But we're solidifying that date, and that we would continue to do the open comment at council that Alan just did. Hopefully we can keep pushing for a third opportunity to see the mayor more frequently. So that's kind of where we are. Diana's really working with us to try and keep us on the radar so that we can
She's fantastic.
start to build a relationship with the mayor's office where they're utilizing us in the most efficient way.
You mentioned DMA
Sam's
and
been waiting with his hand up for
Yes.
a while.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused. I don't understand what the challenge is for the mayor to come to this meeting. I just don't get it. We're under his purview, right? I mean, the Office of Equity and Human Rights Commission is in his portfolio. And we asked him to come here, how long's it been now? I mean, it's like, I feel like it's like we're trying to get a meeting with the President of the United States. I just don't understand. And it's, to me, it feels disrespectful. It feels as though he doesn't value this work, this body, what we do, this office. So, I mean, I don't, you know, I mean, that's, I don't know how everybody else feels, but, you know, it's not that difficult to schedule 20 minutes to come to this meeting once a month. I mean, once every 6 months, and I just don't understand. And maybe somebody can explain it to me, maybe his calendar's busier than I, you know, Diane, I appreciate Diane working with us, but, I mean, why isn't he coming to this meeting? Why hasn't he been here?
From what I can't answer the question with
Yeah.
me.
And we can't ask him because he doesn't come to the meeting, so.
Well, we'll have an opportunity to do that in September. I know that the executive committee is planned to have that first encounter. And I believe that that's one of the questions that the executive committee can ask. And I want to put in there that while, yeah, it's upsetting that the treatment has happened, or that the lack of treatment or lack of acknowledgement has gone on this long, I feel like we're at a juncture now where we can strategically utilize the what's happened to get more of what we want. And I think that we can do that without further alienating the relationship, because currently there is no relationship. So what we can do is we can try and build a relationship, not by giving up the farm, but by knowing who we are, what we want, and being very specific about it. Diana was very clear to say that, you know, we all know that the mayor comes from a specific sector of the private sector, and that he has his interest. And like with any relationship, if we want to foster that relationship, we're going to have to speak in that language to some degree in order to be able to leverage that piece of connection to get the relationship that we want. And I believe that we're in a really great place to be able to do that. And I am encouraged that the executive committee will go in and really kind of push that, but not lying down and becoming a doormat, but saying we are the HRC, we want a place where we can disagree, and we want to have a relationship with people. Within that relationship, we have to be able to disagree.
And I appreciate that, but he chose us. We were under Fritz's, right? When he took over,
I don't know exactly how that.
But Sam,
So, I mean-
Here's what I see.
he put us under his portfolio.
But
But
Sam,
he's-
that
and he's
us,
another-
that us is the Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Mhm.
He meets regularly with Dante, he has regular contact with Dante. And so, yeah, I would say that the mayor is fully aware of who we are and what we do. And yeah, my sense would be that it may not be a priority for him to accept an invitation to come to this meeting. It doesn't mean that he doesn't know what the office is doing, what we're doing. But yeah, for him to come to this meeting, I think would not be a high priority. It doesn't mean the work that we're doing or that the office isn't important. That's what's in his portfolio. So, I mean, there are a lot of different things that we can do to elevate that profile. And I think exactly what Kenya's saying is how we get there. I don't think we are at a point where where an invitation for him to come here for 15 or 20 minutes is important to him, but I think we could get there by continuing to work on that relationship. I think when we asked him, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, probably weren't even close to having a relationship that would make it important for him to come and answer our questions about who he hires and how he hires. But we can get closer to that.
Just interject on something quick. Don, I walked in when Don Davis talking about the tax credit piece.
Yep.
That in the policy committee we talked about that. That's an opportunity. We had conversations around Human Rights Commission partnering with the Black Knowledge Chief Initiative on that. So, and he's very passionate about that tax credit piece. So,
I just wanted to mention that I do go to those B meetings regularly, and I will be there this Saturday. So as far as connection to, there is someone who's been there now that I'm an official, sworn in person. So now we can say that there is someone who is there to attend. So
I'm on a steering committee too, so.
So there's. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
You
it's-
raising your hand.
No,
which is
it's
important.
okay, and I interjected before against you. What I really want to see is the commission as a whole be part of the decision about what is our end request? How regularly and what capacity, is the commission as a whole okay with the mayor just visiting with the executive committee? I don't think we've all discussed that. And if we're not, to what degree do we want, and what capacity, and how regularly do we want to request to meet with him and or somebody from the staff? So is that something that we can do?
The reason that the executive committee is sort of slated for the first piece is at the mayor's request.
I understand that, I'm just talking about moving forward,
And then
because I'm
moving
looking at,
forward,
can we, like, for me, ideally, we have, and this is what I've known in my other work with elected officials. We can anticipate meeting 3 times a year, 4 times a year, something like that. So, and it's in the calendar regularly.
So here's one thing. I hear and you have really, Sam and you, very valuable point for me. We are, one thing that I understand, our elected officials are here to serve us, not we serve them. I believe in that. An effective leader who takes the opportunity to go and organize his followers or representatives. Saying that, I know he is very busy. I know that I heard that he has really passion for the university. Let me take you back in history of our Human Rights Commission, how it has been. We had Amanda Fritz in the beginning as a commissioner assigned to us. She has been in a lot of meetings. Then when she couldn't, she has been sending staff. That's how it has been going on. We can go the direction of requesting that it is very valuable for us in our time to have his staff, if we cannot, one of his senior staff that report to him, around the accountability that they are coming to our meeting at least every other month, because we like to feel we are valued, we are listened to, we are heard. That's another direction we can take. Another thing for me, with all respects, even when I was the executive committee, I said this to our executive committee when I used to be chair, I really don't want the executive committee to be here in hierarchy and the Human Rights Commission here. If he's coming to meet, anybody wants to meet, is the whole commission. I don't want that relationship of obscurity and hiding and or friendship or relationship or become like that everything on the spot. So for me to have anybody that we want to hear or ask them our individual questions in general to anybody, governor or king or whoever coming here, it has to be all these valued people around the table that they have dedicated, they give their time, they take the risk. Nobody give me gas to drive around for a Human Rights Commission. I pay for it. Be valued. So for me, and this is maybe my last meeting with you, if not, probably we'll see if I can do it next month. I will tell you, we are very powerful, we are very valuable. We should think about ourselves like that. And here to serve our community and our officials or employee or paid employees to serve us in our community. That's what I will leave it for. Decide what you choose. And they give you the history of officials' relationship with us. So Amanda Fritz used to send staff and this.
Thank you for that historical perspective.
Yes.
It's so valuable, and we are going to miss that sorely. In the interest of time, I'd like to move forward quickly on the rest of the committees because we have a public that we're accountable to that is has come here to speak with us. And I'd like to say this has been one of the most valuable meetings that we've had because of the discussions that have taken place. And I'd like to offer the idea floating out there in the future that our meetings be, don't kill me, longer, so that more things like this could occur and that we could talk more deeply about things as a body. So that's just an idea to consider. I'm sorry. I said don't kill me, and I said it doesn't have to happen. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Emily.
Let me interject for a second.
Yes.
I feel like last meeting we talked about public comment. I know that it's always at this time coming earlier just for the purposes of us actually getting to it. Is that, I don't know what the list looks like. Is there?
We have 3 people, 2 people left who indicated yes for public comment.
So should
Yes,
we
here.
decide to move that up this time? Because I know we talked about it last time. and
Yes,
get to
I
everything
want to
else.
move that up.
Okay, sorry.
I agree. No,
Yeah.
that was a good idea.
Great call.
I don't know.
All right, let's have our public comment now. Please.
Who'd like to go first? Courtney Roberts.
You got to start. You were talking about the 6,
Oh.
I'm sorry, the 9-year-old and the
We actually probably have
Do you
to
need
come
the
up here, that way
microphone?
we can actually see it. No, I think she should come up so we can see.
And let's try to raise our voices at the meeting so that as we're being recorded, or our public is here so they can hear what we're saying.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Courtney,
Good to see you
welcome.
again. I
I promise I won't be more. Anyway, about the 9-year-old and the family, I'd like to point out a few things. I think it'd be a really good idea to have Dante go and speak to Home Forward and the Powers that be Police Department about what happened. There's nothing quite like having an attorney on the phone to get an official story. Instead of, well, you know, we kind of do this and we kind of do that. That way you guys will have a more informed and actually probably a copy of how things actually work there. Because things can fluctuate from worker to worker. As far as the police officers being sent out there, when the family had requested that they not be sent out there, an eviction is a non-emergency thing. Okay, it's like, hey, I've got a cat stuck on the fence in my backyard. They'll get there when they get there. This could take several hours, it could be tomorrow, usually not, but it could be like, you can call in the morning, they might get out there in the afternoon. There was definitely a choice. I'm pretty sure that if the family made that request, that those two particular officers not come out there, that the officers, provided the family did it through the proper channels, I assume they did, the officers were probably aware of that. So I don't see any reason why they couldn't have said to dispatch, hey, you know, we were asked not to do this thing, or other people available. Okay, those are my suggestions on that. Any officers could have gone out there. As far as the family, I'm glad that they moved on. I'm glad that everything's working out for them. I just hope that it continues to work out. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. If you'd like to come forward, yes. Would you like the microphone?
Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm Xiao Yang. I'm a chemical practitioner here in Portland. I came here to this meeting before. And the last couple of months, several months ago actually, one of the practitioners, Lauren, came to talk about the organ harvesting in China from Guangdong practitioners. So I just want to give a brief update about the House Resolution 281. Actually, last week, it was marked up in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and the resolution got about 201 representatives to co-sponsor it, and after it's really good. And also I think on August 1st, another new bill was introduced in the House. It's a 5379, I guess, and it's aiming to punish those who severely violate human rights and are continuing doing so in China. And I think if it gets passed, it will become a U.S. law, and I think it will have a great impact on the people, like in China, doing all this, commit all these crimes. So I'm not sure. Last time Lauren she introduced the Falun Gong or not. And basically Falun Gong is a peaceful practice, ancient practice for mind and body, and it became really, really popular through the 90s. So in 7 years, by 1999, and it attracted 100 million people in China, because after 40-some years of rule under the Communist Party, the Falun Gong for the first time brought back this traditional way of life. It's rooted in Chinese culture with its cultivation culture. Basically, people improve themselves through whatever they're doing. So this kind of concept was brought back. I think that's why it becomes so popular, because those things are still in people's heart. However, the Communist Party see this, the whole thing as a threat of their control. They started the persecution in 1999. And so after that, many people, thousands of them, confirmed to be killed. This organ harvesting came up in 2006. Witness came up, a couple of them, and also some human rights lawyers and they have some independent investigation, basically came to the conclusion about thousands, tens of thousands practitioners are killed for their organs. So I think there are lots of evidences, like the sharp increase of organ transplant in China. That's one thing since 2000 actually, and it just people just you can't find a donor, even if they claim they use the death penalty criminals. Just the number just does not match. There's different information you can find online, stoporganharvesting.org. And so I'm here. I hope this Human Rights Commission can help us to communicate with the city. And I spoke at the city council meeting last week, and I'm trying to set up a meeting with the commissioners and the mayors. And I don't know how it might be difficult. And you were just talking about this. I know this, and for mayor we just never can get. But I felt through the interaction with them, with the office, I felt they're under pressure from the Communist Party and with the business. Actually, to me, business should be separated from the human rights issue, from a government, not from government, from the Communist Party. But seems like they are under the pressure. They do not want to recognize the practice of Falun Gong because of that, and also they have business. They say they have business here. They do not. But I feel it's an issue. It's not a good sign for our city. So I hope if your commission can have some way to pass their own resolution or speak up. Actually, the Beaverton City Council passed the resolution last December to support the resolution 281. So maybe every voice counts. Maybe it can help us, not help us, and help everyone to keep this living environment healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any contact information? Do you have a contact card or
Yes.
phone number?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I have some information if you're interested about the very general.
Questions?
We have a little bit of time for questions and comments.
Yeah, I have a quick question, I guess. And it's, so, being the Portland Human Rights Commission, we have to do stuff that's based in Portland. Do you know how this issue intersects with issues in Portland? Is it just the business interest?
Yeah, it's for us as a group, Falun Gong has no form, no organization. Basically, generally, it's a practice free of charge. We're all volunteers. But very obvious one is since 1999 we cannot participate in community events, like especially Chinese organized, and so far still. But it's much better now. But still, you can tell something like this where we rejected from that because people is so afraid of the Communist Party, and also we try to apply for proclamation, which Falun Gong has received so many thousands actually proclamation for the Falun Dafa Day in May, and the response from the office, mayor's office, is we cannot give you because the consulate will be angry, will be unhappy, just like the Tibetans. But I found this is it's not very normal for this country. I expect here it should be they're almost like a clerical duty. I feel the Falun Dafa is such a beautiful practice, will bring the society lots of good. So this is very immediate, I feel.
Thank you for following that up. Okay, the Emily G. Godfrey Awards. The committee will meet again August 11th, that's Monday, next Monday at 4 o'clock at OEHR in the Interstate Room. The meeting will go from 4 o'clock to 5:30, and we'll be nailing down venues, budget, and getting some technological help from Jeff to nail down the mechanisms for getting input about who will get the awards, the invitation work that needs to be done, and et cetera. And I look forward to meeting with the committee then.
Could you remind us the date of
Yeah,
the
that's
event?
August 11th, 4
The event.
o'clock.
No,
The
no,
event.
not the event.
The event.
Oh, the date of the event is not been set.
Approximately December 10th.
Yeah.
Yes. And Alan's going to report briefly on our report to council. He wrote a really beautifully written, very elegantly eloquent report to city council this morning.
And I gave it to city council this morning. I can send it out to folks. So I think if we can do this more regularly, one of the things I said to Linda is then we wouldn't have to just spend our time, updating them on 10 different things. We can spend our time, that 3-minute period on one topic. It's really hard in 3 minutes to cover a lot of things. So I'm happy to send that to folks if you're interested, or send it to Kenya and she can post it somewhere.
Great. Oh, I'm so glad that that's going to be having some legs. It's a beautifully written summary of our work, and I was really proud to give it today. And I thought from the commissioner's face and the mayor's face that they liked what they heard, and I felt that we were having a stronger relationship with the mayor. I wanted to address that briefly. That I've seen him at a lot more human rights events. I'm reading in the paper that he's doing more human rights, upholding human rights more and caring more about them. So maybe it's going in a positive direction. And
Shabri's waiting, and then I want to.
Shabri, I'm kind of half blind on this side,
Well, I just
so
wanted,
I don't see you if I'm turning.
okay, I just
turn
wanted
that
to
way.
make sure if we had any other, are those the only two public comments that we had that were still signed up? Is that?
No, it's ongoing.
Well, people need to sign up for it. So if
Yeah, no, I just
somebody's
didn't know if we
interested
had
in doing
any others, because I know we were moving that forward, but we're,
it, I don't know that we have volunteers for it. Who's
There was
coordinating that?
loosely a couple meetings ago, Sam volunteered for.
oh,
today.
no, I'm sorry, I'm probably, okay, I'm mixing everybody up. I meant, are there other people who were waiting,
Oh.
who would
Oh,
like
for
to
public
speak,
comment.
public
No,
comment?
we only had 2 people.
Okay, so only 2 people, okay, because I just wanted to make sure.
Good housekeeping.
Thank
And
you.
then- And I could, yeah, I would love your, what you wrote, and I think maybe you should just go out to everybody.
Yeah.
And I guess if there were 2 high points that you talked about, is that something you can share now, and then we can just move forward from there, like just 2 brief, fitted into 60-second high points?
Well, I think the rundown is, I just reiterated the fact that we wanted to help to start making sure that we're fulfilling our role as an advisory body to council on human rights and civil rights issues in the city of Portland. And then I touched on the 3 areas that we're working in right now around housing. So I talked about that meeting we had in East Portland, the bus tour, and then actually on today's agenda was the short-term rental lodging tax going to support the Housing Investment Fund. So I indicated actually wrongly that we support that, so my apologies if we don't. And I talked about the fact that we're working more on human trafficking and mostly foreign-born trafficking, and use that to connect the ERCO event and what the demonstration at ERCO to say that we also support the mayor's support and council support of ERCO, and then just reiterated that with regard to the police bureau, that we have an operating community police relations committee, and we're open to always furthering those dialogues around police relations and police accountability. That's about all you can say in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a public comment made last month with us that suggested that we actually, instead of just the 3 minutes available, that we actually get on the agenda. Is there any?
Of the time certain.
Yeah. the times third, and is there any interest to, talk about that?
Well, the justification was that community members come and that we'd be taking a community
Right.
spot, and
Or we have
so
the capacity to just ask
to
for
get
them to-
something else that they can't access the same way we could as a
Right,
body.
I think it's a good idea, is why I'm
Yeah.
trying to keep it
I'm
floating.
also.
I think it's one of the idea, I think it's something that we're working towards through this relationship
Yeah.
building with the mayor's office. I think that we should continue to use what we have until we can obtain the gold standard, which would be an agenda spot with the mayor. But I think that that's gonna come through this relationship building process that we're engaging in with the office.
And
Well,
the
no, I
agenda
think
spot
what-
with council.
Yeah, because that's just, I think that's just a call in, there's a particular person, it's the same as if you're gonna do a request a proclamation to be read. So, and anyone can do that, like, I mean, as long as the proclamation is.
But how does it work?
I actually don't think
Yeah.
so. So I think that the regular, I don't know, maybe Kenya's gonna find out more information for us, but I think that getting on the regular agenda is a gatekeeper function. That the members of city council and the mayor, bring forward, propose this agenda. So if you look at the council agenda, it's the business of council. And so it's a big deal to get on the agenda. That's what the,
Right, but at times
the communication spots are not. That's the one that you call Carla and say, I want to be on the communication spot. It's generally members of the public. There are a lot of other boards and commissions that follow the communication spots that come and actually use that spot for updates. So it is not held open solely for the public. There are lots of different folks who use that time. So, but yeah, time certain pieces are significantly different to me. That's my understanding.
So I think that there's probably like there's levels to that, because a proclamation, which takes a few minutes, 3 if maybe, possibly 4 if you want it, because typically you're also offered time to comment on it, and that usually is about 3 minutes plus the proclamation being read. That I feel is different than
Yeah.
everything else that happens. It
Pro-
typically happens
proclamation-
before business
Before,
starts.
that's right, proclamations are read, and almost anybody who actually acts, their proclamation gets read for Human Rights Day. You write the proclamation, and they read it and accept it, and, yeah, that's proclamations are different.
Right, so, but I'm wondering if the time certain piece that we're talking about is totally different, because I definitely took what he said, Ashley, and Amy, in the same, like, oh, I didn't even recognize that they were in fact the same thing, and that we should, in any way, shape, or form, definitely not be taking additional time. if at all
Time certain, so time certain is time certain, you mean the time certain communication spot, or time certain agenda items?
I don't know, do we know? Because I didn't know
I
before
would be
last
time-
meeting that.
It would be time certain agenda item, and what I believe, sorry, we would use that time for is when we want to make recommendations
Yeah.
to council.
Get decision on their part,
Well,
direction.
maybe not so much direction
tell.
as say, hey, here's what we think you should be responding to, here's how we think here's a best practice for that particular issue. But I think we don't have some of the key components in place. Like, we don't have a conduit to each of the commissioners, or each of the commissioners' new policy plans. We don't know. So that's some infrastructure that we
Right.
have to build in so that we can be on top of that. So when they're working on a policy or a project that resonates for us or that has some human rights implications, we have that time certain spot to be able to go in and make the recommendation that we've been basically commissioned to do, is to make recommendations to them. So that is, from where I have to operate, that's something that I'm really trying to solidify through this sort of relationship with Diana and Josh. I was on her, but Josh Albert. Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh, wherever you are. But I feel like I'm trying to create this relationship so that we have a relationship where we can go, hey, we're ready now to take that agenda time certain spot because we have the infrastructure to be able to make the recommendations that
That are relevant.
council need and that are relevant.
Do you see like is there a time frame you see to where that capacity would be built in?
It's a loose time frame because things aren't moving as fast as I had hoped. I had hoped to get us on the August agenda with Dante, but that didn't work. So we're on September, and I'm holding them to September. And then in working this relationship, honestly, I think that we might be able to have the infrastructure set up and ready to take an agenda certain spot say by the first of the year. And I think that that's not very conservative on my part. I think that's being aggressive and really trying to, once we get that little foot in the door, we're gonna stick our whole body in the door and just say, hey, we're ready. So maybe January, February agenda is what I'm shooting for.
So until that time, if we want to have opportunities to get in front of the mayor and the council and speak about issues, one of the opportunities to do that is by signing up for those 5 communication spots at each council, each Wednesday at council.
And I'd like to say, you'll be amazed when you get Alan's communication and how much you can say in 3 minutes. I'm really impressed. So getting 3 minutes, if you use it well, is really a valuable thing. And we need to move on quickly. We want a report from Alan and myself about the bus tours.
Bus tours were held in July. I don't remember the dates exactly. Friday and a Saturday, we had 2 fairly full buses. We worked with Donna Maxey at Race Talks, and we had a really fantastically diverse group of folks, meaning just from all walks of life. And that's, I talked about, I'm a volunteer tour guide with the Fair Housing Council, and most of those tours are organizations that, it's a school, or it's PGE, or it's a multifamily Northwest. And so it's this group of folks that either were required to be there, or it's part of their work day. This was folks who really wanted to be there, signed up at the public. We went to, I went to 3 or 4 different types of events and recruited folks to come on the bus, and then Donna sent her communications out. So it was, people from the city were there, people from the county. We had a Multnomah County circuit judge that was there. We had folks from R2D2, and folks who had, we went to one of the McMinniman's history pubs, and a bunch of folks signed up that had gone to see that presentation about a Japanese, a different type of Japanese internment camp in Nissa. So it was really fantastic. To me, it's an expensive tour for us to put on. It costs us $3,000, $1,500 a tour. But I think we get a great amount of value, a great amount of exposure, and the education that folks on the bus get, I think, is really outstanding. And we get really positive comments. During the last part of the planning of the tour, as I was receiving many phone calls, somebody from the mayor's office called and wanted to get their folks on the bus. And what they said, we have 17 people that would like to go on the tour. And I had to explain to the person that there aren't 17 spots, and these are the days that it is. They weren't quite sure how the logistics work. So, but I think they're going to try and do a tour. So I think there's great value to me. That's the big thing. So it's fantastic. So we probably had, over the 2 days, 870 and probably 80 to 90 people that were on the tour. So I, the first day, Linda gave an introduction to the Human Rights Commission, and then the second day I did, so we had the opportunity to talk to folks about the Human Rights Commission and why we're involved with the tour, why we're involved with housing. So it was great.
I felt the energy was so good. I thought that the bus was going to take off from the earth and float in the air with the human rights energy that was on that bus. As he said, it was a diverse group. People were really committed. People had a lot of their own stories to tell that fit in whenever the narrator would stop. People would start talking with each other and saying, oh yeah, I remember this or that, or did you know? So the energy just kept building during the whole experience. So I thought it was really educational, uplifting. It made a lot of friends for HRC. There was something really solid. I kept wishing that we would have a grand meeting afterwards to solidify all the energy and put it to work. But I'm sure it went out somewhere in this community and did a lot of positive things. And I'm so thrilled that the mayor's interested in going on one. I think that's another indicator that he's becoming very interested in human rights. And I hope that happens. So we have upcoming events and emerging issues. Budgets are due very quickly, so I'm going to do.
I think we skipped the homeless solutions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, I passed out. Amy did a wonderful redo, kind of an outline of what the Housing Solutions Forum will look like. We haven't set a date yet because we are looking at partnering with another group with New City Initiatives, which is having a homeless awareness walk and information session on November 21st this year that will start at First Unitarian. Start at United Methodist Church and walk through the city, mimicking a day that a homeless person might have. Getting up at the Goose Hollow Family Shelter and walking through the city, ending up at First Unitarian Church. And we are hoping to partner with the group that's putting that on and have that as an endpoint event. But that has not solidified at this point, and some of us are attending meetings. I know I've been out scouting possible venues for that, to make that happen. Does anyone else on the committee want to add anything? Let's see, we meet every second and fourth Wednesday, 5:30 at Park Avenue Cafe. That's on Park Avenue up by Portland State. It's the cafe with the lovely umbrellas. And it's a great quiet meeting, place for a meeting. We're meeting August 13th, 27th, September 10th, 24th. And thank you, Amy, for doing this.
Well, I want
At
to
the
say
very last minute. And
that's
do you have
actually,
something to add?
that's actually our internal document. It wasn't really intended, it's okay, but it's not presented, it's not made for presentation to you guys, so you've seen a little more than you need to. I didn't know that was going to go to you guys. But I think that you have covered everything.
And the talks with the folks that are organizing the Day of Homelessness Awareness is really preliminary at this point. And so are their plans. We talked with the folks, and that's what they shared with us as potentially their hope for the day. So that's they haven't even started to meet and organize yet. So.
I apologize to Amy
That's
for
okay.
sending this document out. And you can get into a lot of trouble here. And I do want to apologize. I just thought it was a good kind of rundown where we are and what our thoughts are. This event has been a moving target because as homeless issues arise in the city and as the city's consciousness, the public consciousness is growing on this, we've discovered more and more interest in these longer-term solutions. So we feel that it's been a moving target, and as different government entities are working on this problem, they're solidifying their work, and things are just gelling up and firming up. So we're hoping that this forum will be some kind of a culmination of public opinion and organizations to come together and suggest 10 possible, really doable solutions to get something done about providing more public housing and more low-income housing in our city. So that's my report. And now we're on to upcoming events and emerging issues. We hope that, and we are partnering with Sisters of the Road, and Michael, who has left that organization for now, was working with us. But now I understand that Courtney is going to be on board with us, working as a liaison at Michael's behest. So we really appreciate, Courtney, that you are that you're going to be on board with us, because we need your ideas and your experiences and your voice. Thank you very much. So we're down to upcoming events and emerging issues. Committee budgets are due. I will do my best to make that deadline. We're having a social.
Can we talk about that budget thing for a second?
Yep.
The law enforcement committee met, we meet the fourth week of every month, and we've worked really hard to develop our work plan for the year, and we have made a request to turn that budget in, not on the 8th, but by September 1st. So I did email this to Sonji, but she hasn't had a chance to respond, so I thought I'd ask the executive committee is there something that would be difficult if we waited until September 1st for the committee to turn that budget in? 'Cause we'd like a chance to really make sure we're on the same page before we commit to those projects that we're asking money for.
It makes sense to me. I know that Dante would like to see some of the budgets, so that he has an idea of how much different things are going to cost. So,
Okay, so can we say it's okay unless we hear from you guys in the near future?
Is that a request from Dante, Linda? Is that a request from Dante? Does he have a,
When
does he
I
have a date
visited
yet?
with him last, it was in late June, and he was asking me then about budget for roundtable and budget for the luncheon. Because he wanted to know. It was my impression that he wanted the information.
Sure, he does.
Just so he could see it, you know.
Yeah, I think the whole idea is for him to see the whole 2014, 2015 budget. I'm just wondering about timing.
Well, I think that I could have a more realistic idea of those two budgets by that time, but I can't.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I wouldn't be able to, I would be able to have a more realistic budget for the roundtable and the luncheon by September, much more
Oh,
so
yes,
than
as
we
we
did, so I agree.
Okay, gotcha.
Is there a budget or is there a committee that sponsors the community events or anything? Is there a budget for that?
In the past, I mean, our budget process has definitely be approved. And it's, people have shared their ideas, and committee chairs and committees have discussed what their budget needs would be. And so like the Community Discovery Committee, there was a time when there was quite a bit of money set aside for different community events. And then there have been discussions and decisions to support things like at NAIAD. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna remember what that was called, but we sponsored the creation of sort of really beautiful photographs of community elder leaders and descriptions of their contributions over their whole lifetime. And we sponsored, I think, 10 of those a couple years back. It was like an example of things that we've done.
I don't think we did. I think we sponsored, we gave me a gift as part of our, when we met there, it was probably 2 years ago. I'm not sure it was 10, so I think we might have been 2.
It was 5 or 10, but maybe. Either way, it was because I remember being pleasantly surprised by the generosity. But maybe I'm just confusing amount with quantity. But we've also sponsored tables and events and stuff like that.
There's not like a standard
Budget line
yeah.
for community
But
events.
we did that at one point. Yeah, at one point we did that, and it might still be in
We
the
can,
budget.
we can put it in there. What we lack is a person or group that takes on the task of
Deciding.
organizing and prioritizing how we choose those events.
Which is super important, because there's
Yep.
50,000.
That's right, that's right. And so we tend to have either this money that sits there and we don't do anything with, or or the way we spend it is very willy-nilly.
Should that be a part of, should that be a part of the group that is the visibility piece? Because essentially what you're paying for is not only to support the work of said group, but your name is also usually attached to things. I mean, I'm looking at it from a sponsorship perspective. That's one of the ways and reasons. So I feel like it would be something that would be under the
Communications, maybe you mean?
I can't, I'm still looking for like the list of everything, but like, I know, isn't there like a visibility one or a communications one or something that's about speaking to HRs? Again, I don't.
So there's a visibility goal.
Right.
We don't have a committee for that, but there is a
Not community
communications
discovery.
committee still, yes?
Communications, yeah. That's supposed to be. But the Community Discovery Committee originally they had originally talked about taking on that task, but didn't.
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Community discovery was mainly to
Receiving.
discover things what was going on in the community, to just help players.
Like the roundtable event
Yeah.
and then subsequent events that were.
But Rebecca, if you happen to be interested.
I
Right.
manage this, we have, at the office I work out, we have a sponsorship program, and so I manage that there. And if, we have like, we create a document, there's like an email we can send this to, and then maybe there'd be a small committee that would vote on this regularly. So
Well,
I
you
would
would-
be interested in.
Or you could bring recommendations to us,
Right.
and we could vote if necessary. I would, be very supportive of you taking the lead on that if you'd like to.
Yeah, I will. Where would I find out kind of where the budget line item is and who would I talk to?
Do you have some budget documents, Candy?
I don't have any budget. I tried to open a budget document today and I don't have access, in the shared drive. Maybe some. That's that.
Check with Jeff Shu to get that. Buddy, look through.
Who will get it to?
Two.
Rebecca.
I can reach out
To Rebecca.
I can reach out to Sandra and Jeff and see.
Thank you for working on that in advance.
So does the, Emily Valfrey Award, is the budget done for that either?
No, we haven't finished the budget.
Yeah. And
Well,
Georgina, no.
The only thing too that we heard is the budget is in fact.
Oh, we'll talk about that in the committee.
Okay. But, afterward, just since we're on the topic of budget, I feel like CDC needs to talk. HRTF does, about, well, yeah, we're talking about budget too. Does the policy committee need the budget?
I think last time was it, like, we thought we might if we had money for limited things, but honestly, it's the least.
Yeah.
So I think $1,000 is like a little pad of things, but we didn't use it.
Okay. Just
Yeah.
about the budgets that need to be done still.
We have commission gathering on August 30th. And we have several RSVPs and we're looking forward to that. Let's talk about our letter of support to Charlie Mills regarding his stance on his work on immigrant children.
Who's starting the conversation? Who put it there?
Does anybody have anything to say about it?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're saying better.
It was a good thing that happened.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
So do we send a note to, do I send a note to Mayor Hills? Do we send a letter commending him for that?
One of the suggestions that came from Diana is that if there's something like this that we just want to say, good job, we appreciate what you're doing. Social media is a good way to do it, and that, I don't know, are we on the mayor's Twitter feed?
I don't think we follow Twitter.
I think I am, but my personal Twitter feed.
So maybe,
What are our social
if we
media
have
assets?
Facebook or something,
Facebook, we do Facebook.
are we friends with him on Facebook?
I don't know.
So maybe we should become friends with him on Facebook, and then we can send him an attaboy via Facebook, and it becomes transparent to the whole city that HRC supports a specific share
Jeff-
from the mayor.
Jeff runs the Facebook page, or did run the Facebook page, but I assume that was how that worked.
So then that switch over.
So Jeff still has control on social media, so what I'll do is I'll get with Jeff. And I want to be clear, or do we want to send a nice work on the immigrant children issue to the mayor via Facebook?
So I have a comment about it. So if this is the same subject that I'm thinking of, is it where he's allowing immigrants to stay here, correct? So what is this? What is it?
This is the piece where he supports Mayor Kitzhaber in opening, Governor Kitzhaber in opening the state and the city up to house refugee children who will be coming from other holding areas?
So-
will become?
It is the same thing that I heard about on Facebook posting about this kind of subject, and there was, from what I heard of this conversation, there was still concern about the fact that the kids are held in the center for 30 days. And while they're here, even after the 30 days is up, they're to have no contact with the residents of Portland. And it's ran by a state body, but we don't really know like what's going on there. You know, there's no real oversight for it to make sure that these kids who have just probably been going through really traumatic experiences are really having their needs met.
So I've heard that Metropolitan Family Services is doing something with that. I'm not certain what exactly. I just know someone whose job right now is to work with these children. That's pretty much the limit of what I know, but so I don't know
Yeah.
if it's them that is
DHS will be
contracted.
dedicating some
would say
staff,
DHS.
DHS will be dedicating some staff to this. They're trying to create a collective, I think, in the city to do the work with the kids when they come to that. Some of that work might even be foster home.
So, we're on the topic of a statement of support to Hales, and thank you, Dale, for adding this other piece. We could make a statement of support to Charlie Hales, Mayor Hales, excuse me, but add with an add-on. We're interested in hearing, we're interested in tracking, we're excited that there's this coalition developing, please keep us posted, something like that.
I think that would be a good use of our position to say, you know, great job where you are, and
We want to stay up there.
we'd like to recommend something more, or we'd like to be brought into the future conversations around, you know, how this looks and what it probably affects us.
Is that something that the communications committee typically does?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would think so. And
That
who's on
fall
that
back.
committee, Sunji and
Sonji.
not Kyle? No, okay. So maybe somebody gets that
I can do that.
suggestion, request to Sunji.
I will do that.
And do we know what social media assets we do have outside of what is the outside of Facebook?
I don't think there are any.
It is Facebook.
There's a
We
Yeah, we
have-
have a website.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes, and I know that the policy committee has something to say, and I'll bet PCRP does, and the nominating committee, we have some absences coming up.
So
How's
the
that
Housing
next
Rights
step?
had something in, I also need to go. But
I think we
think
should go
mine
ahead
would be
first.
good. So I'm just gonna pass around. This came late last week, and I didn't realize it until Diallo highlighted it for me this weekend. The Oregon Inclusionary Zoning Coalition we are a part of that, and have been for some time. We're working on the issue of repealing the statewide ban on inclusionary zoning. Inclusionary zoning is a tool of development where it requires new development to set aside a certain amount of their new units for people at certain income levels. But the city of Portland is prevented from doing that because of the statewide ban. So we worked in the last session with this coalition, which had a different name at the time, to repeal that ban. We fell short. There was a work group created to look at the issue. They have decided not to move forward with proposing repeal of inclusionary zoning. And the coalition drafted and has now sent this letter to Representative Reardon and Representative Parrish, who are the co-chairs of this work group. So the request came late to indicate whether or not the members were signing on to this letter. I looked it over, communicated with the people who I thought were on the Housing Zoning Task Force, but some of them weren't. And then indicated that yes, we were fine being on this letter, but I wanted to let you guys know what the letter actually said. But I think that, it's basically just we're disappointed in what you did. We think that you should be considered doing something different. So There's gonna be a meeting at some point in the future to sort out what next steps to take on this, and obviously, I expect I will be at that, if not other people from the town, the next task force, so we will keep you updated.
So just a point of process thing, so we're all on the same page with that. So we are signing as Portland Human Rights Commission, and you were the action lead on that. Is that something that needed to go to vote? I'm a little lost on that part.
I am too.
Okay, yeah, understandable. Do we
I-
need to, do we need to vote approval of this?
Well, I would be fine, I mean, I'm fine moving to ask you to approve ex post facto.
Because this happened, right? August
Yeah,
4th?
already happened.
Okay, I was just wondering if the date was different.
Yeah, and they're actually gonna be sending an email soon about scheduling another full stakeholder meeting. But I think that when we were on, we were talking about, can the HRC support as well as can a task force support? Is that possible for two of our bodies to do that?
I don't,
And does
I
that
don't
exist?
find
Two, or would it be
anything
one and the same?
prohibiting that.
Right, there's nothing that prohibits it, but it's redundant.
Okay.
If the whole body supports it, then the suggestion is that the task force that comes out of that body also supports it.
Well, I mean, the reason why I bring it up is, say there are community members on a committee. That would be one reason why a committee would be different, but also, there was specific reasons behind like why the HRTF wanted to support it when we were talking in the email. For namesake, we were saying that the HRTF
In
was
recognition.
giving recognition to HRTF for the stuff that they've been doing on it as well. Whereas the HRC, if they supported it, it has the weight of the full commission, which is a different reason, but it's also valuable.
And so I just want to explain the thinking that went into this. We have signed on to this coalition, have been part of it for 2 years now.
I see.
Our reason for joining was we support the repeal of the ban. The letter is in support for the repeal of the ban. Therefore, it seemed obvious to me that the Human Rights Commission would sign this or should sign this. And when I thought about like trying to explain to the person who was coordinating the letter, okay, it's the Housing Rights Task Force of the Human Rights Commission, it just seemed like it
Well,
was.
and just from like a marketing and branding mindset, what we want people to think is not HRTF. We want people to think HRC at all times. HRC is just everywhere. So if HRC is HRTF, is CPRC, is LERCOM, what people should see outside should in fact be HRC.
Yeah, I
And that
agree.
would be that multiplicity of continuing to see that is what we want to see at all times. We know, and if someone asks, there is a task force within HRC that's specifically looking at this, but at all times, it should always be branded and marketed HRC collectively.
I entirely agree with you, and I just want to remind folks that we as a commission in our redesigning the process model wanted to be able to act, for a committee to act really quickly and not have to go through the HRC process. So in the rapid get it out there fast, sometimes we agree that sometimes that can happen, where it just goes to committee.
Because we're not allowed to vote between monthly meetings.
Yes.
But we can vote.
Well, not,
Yeah.
we come together and vote.
Yes.
Vote in the public.
No,
Well,
we
only on
can
the first
only,
one.
our votes can only happen in a public meeting.
Yeah.
So
So-
So we can't do it in between, Jeff works.
since this is not rapid, I think that we should vote.
So I
Commission.
am happy to move and request support of this letter that has already gone out with our.
I second. Votes in favor? Votes opposed?
Well, I hope that you not send that letter out. All right. Yesterday.
Retract. Lloyd,
Oh my God.
Lloyd, I am sorry that this didn't pass. I appreciate every minute that you spent
Oh,
on it.
thank you.
Thank you.
I am
This
far
could,
from
this
one
could have
suffering.
been a real dream for Oregon, and I thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, this obviously is disappointing, but there is a new session coming up and depending on the political layout, this may not be dead. So we'll just have to see.
Let's hope not. City council has several people there who were really upset about all of our citizens without housing downtown. This is a burgeoning issue, so.
With that, I do have to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd. It's good to see everybody.
Thanks so
So
much.
September, right?
Early.
So we have Laricon, the new kid on the block.
On the block. Would you like to announce the new name?
Yeah. But did we pass over the,
Yeah.
it's passed
Oh,
over?
I'm sorry.
You need to go.
I'm sorry. We passed over the call to action for Young Black Male Initiative.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Who brought that up?
What's that?
Who's bringing that next topic up?
Well, that's a good question, but it's on there.
Call to action. No, I don't think it was, it's just call to action. Do you have the call to action?
Maybe it was Emmanuel and he couldn't be here because of his father's funeral.
Somebody was talking about Nunez. This is Diana next to us.
You want to say?
Sure.
Good point.
Okay, so
Are we gonna vote?
we're moving on?
Yes.
No, I don't think we're moving on yet, because we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So-
I was trying to wrap up
Yeah.
that motion.
So that we talked about the fact that we skipped over Young Black Male Initiative, which I think is a VMA work that's happening at the city. Portland, right? So who's gonna do something, report, talk about?
I think we were saying was that the people who brought that up, wanted to bring that up for today are not here.
Right,
Are
and
you?
Daniel's not here, Sophie's not here. Is there anybody else here who's working on this?
That's, I am,
Yeah.
but that's
Do you
what,
want to bring,
I
you want
see.
to?
well, I'm, it says the union, so the call to action is that we want people to be included is the idea.
The call to action from Diana was that we be, that HRC be a part of it and make recommendations.
Great, well, we do that, because there are 3 of us who go, so.
Done?
Is there any way to, like, say, here's HRC?
Yeah.
So when I do,
This is-
last time I
Yes.
was there, I stood up and when I did my introductions, along with Obama's staff who was there, and the MBK initiative and the National League of Cities, I did announce myself as my professional self and then also as HRC commissioner. So
And
I can
we'll-
continue to do that if that's what we're stating.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to
Is
happen.
it,
Okay.
is it a meeting that happens at the Salvation Army? Is that-
No, this is a series of meetings. I think we're on the 3rd of 4 or 3rd of 6 or something like that. But it's been visioning sessions and large stakeholder group. And,
Who's the third? You say there were 3?
so
You and Damon.
Damon has been going. I mean, I guess Emmanuel's been going. I haven't. He may have been at the first one.
And are you, it sounded like Damon was on a different board related to that, right?
So there's a steering committee, there's a stakeholder group. Damon is on the steering committee, and we have HRC representation pretty much at the levels that we would assume that we should be. So,
Nice, thank
and I don't
you.
know where Emmanuel is in that, but I assume that he's there and at probably in the same realm that I would be there.
I'm gonna kind of make an assumption, clear it up for me. That maybe what Diana is not seeing is that you guys are there representing, as representatives of HRC and not as community members who happen to be on HRC or happen to connect to HRC. Is there a way to make your affiliation to HRC more visible and more power?
Yeah, I can say that first for sure, and I can mention that we have multiple members of the commission who have been attending, who are on the steering committee, the stakeholder group, and look forward to continuing visioning sessions. So yeah, I can definitely.
And you guys will be bringing back recommendations that come out of the HRC to them if we have it.
I mean, I think like exactly with what Dante was talking about before in the delineation between. It literally left, just threw it away. What we were talking about before? Yes, I can guess. It was just like,
So it's the camera.
oh, I keep forgetting that it's here.
So we could also make that an official HRC position. That
Like
is
the liaison thing we're
liaisons,
doing with
right. So we
Cameron,
have
okay.
liaisons to the Black Male Initiative that are officially representing positions that the HRC has related to what's being done for Black Male Initiative achievement around ending discrimination, around our work around police relations and police accountability, because I don't know enough about the work that's being done there, but I'm assuming it relates quite closely to the work that we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think next time we talk with Diana, also we can specify kind of what she thinks is ideal and outside of what I can do and what we can serve as a liaison.
So somebody will come back and call that.
Yes.
And should we, where do those meetings take place and where?
They move all across the city
Oh,
and
I see.
they're based upon wherever the staff gets it set up. This next one will be at SEI.
Thank you so much.
Sorry to stop Lurcom and the new name.
Okay, we have,
Here it is.
we have a new kid on the block, Vericon, and we
Right.
have
Not
policy and nominating.
Okay, so Lurcom changed their name. It's gonna be, because I guess Lurk was too much for people. It's gonna be Committee on Law Enforcement and Rights. So that. Committee on.
Clear.
Clear, yeah, Committee on Law Enforcement and Rights, clear. And the acronym would be
Advocacy
clear.
and review. You want
Committee,
Committee on Law Enforcement,
Advocacy.
Advocacy and review.
Sorry, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. But the acronym is clear, so if you guys hear clear, that's what it is.
Way less creepy.
What?
Thank you, that was changed by popular demand. So, we're ready for September to give you the whole shebang. One, what our general projects will be as things come up throughout the year, what we'll address, and then our ongoing project, which will be a Know Your Rights training series. And as we mentioned last month, we're looking at a PowerPoint series with specific segments related to specific populations or communities. So immigrant, for example, and we're also looking at having community members who are already doing trainings in these specific arenas. Like, I know that CIO is doing trainings, that for them to have cameos, because we want to honor what work they're already doing. We're also looking at doing an event that will kick off the dissemination of this and some printed material to help disseminate this as well. So all of that said, we've got a little more work to do before we can bring that package to you in detail with a budget and what we can do that September meeting.
Did you guys connect with Polo around sales?
I think that's a little premature. I mean, we know Polo, and I think a couple of us did touch base with him. Thank you for that reintroduction. And I think that's at our dissemination, or I think maybe we contact with them in terms of the need assessment. Yes, but then particularly with dissemination is what I was hearing, once it's all ready to go. Anything else I'm missing? Oh, and I feel like we're overdue in communicating with CBRC about what this committee is about, so I'd love for.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. You said it's
Overdue, we're
overdue. I thought
overdue
you said
in
we're overdue, but I didn't know it.
in communicating with CPRC about what this, introducing ourselves and what our goals are. So I'd love to talk with you, Sam.
Yeah.
And I thought Damon as well, because he has been supportive of this committee developing, and we can just powwow on that.
When is the next CPRC meeting? 2 weeks? 20.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments?
Oh.
Nominating committee.
Well, we need to have a meeting and nominate some people. So,
By committee.
by committee. We need to, I think in the next couple of weeks, we need to put an announcement out for, what's that? Yeah, for new members, because we're losing Kyle. You're staying, huh?
I'm staying, yes, please forgive me for.
Is it Kyle or was it?
Abdul.
It's Kyle.
Abdul.
Kyle is news to you guys. You guys
I
want
thought
to?
Kyle, I thought everybody knew that.
Only,
Some of
only,
us did.
yeah,
So everybody knows now.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
everybody who's here.
So what we'll tell you guys
Yes.
is that Kyle will stay on through October, but his actual term will be up in October, so he won't be he won't get a new commission after that, but he'll still be a friend and an ally in the community around the human trafficking.
Okay.
And that's another reason why I stay. Too much turnover is not good.
Yeah,
So,
so we need to put an announcement out probably the next couple weeks.
So it's 3 positions then, because I've heard Abdul and Malloy.
So
The
this
rule is
Kyle.
terming out, right?
right.
So the same thing with Kyle, essentially.
But Kyle's not doing his second half, because there's like 2 3-year terms. Abdul's done with his 6 already.
he's,
We're both terming out, one can't go.
But
however it
Kyle-
works,
One's
we're
2, 3.
losing 3, right?
Not Malloy, right?
No, Malloy is in the next,
Right.
he's the next one after
So-
Abdul, so just two.
Choose is 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
November
talked,
1st.
I talked to Jeff about putting the public notice out for nomination.
Yeah, and then we have to do some outreach to some of the other
Yes.
communities that we have not
right.
had applications and interviews from the Mexican community and, you know, just different communities, so.
Should we set a date to get together and do this?
Yeah.
What's that?
You were just saying the Latino communities or any.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's just come up with it.
So, should we set a date to do
I've been kind of doing it all along in terms of doing outreach, and I was planning on redoing that outreach in early September.
Yeah.
So that we could connect.
So Kenny's asking about setting
Yeah,
a
meeting.
specific date.
Right.
that? And we can do it via email, but I just need to know that we're going
For making the announcement, you mean?
Yeah.
for basically what the plan is and the timeline so that we can start to activate each piece.
Well, I think I'd like to put out the announcement in the next couple of weeks. So maybe 2 weeks from today, put the announcement out. And then we have 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks to get the applications in, and then we can start doing the interviews. And that should put us right into October, right?
Yes, and that seems like one section, the piece around the outreach to, under outreach to communities, how does that fit in with the announcement, getting those applications in? Is that none of my thing, is that something you guys ever do?
In the past, I think there was staff support if it was available to send it out to the listservs, and then all of us sent it out to our respective listservs and connections and did some targeted outreach.
Yeah.
I guess I was hearing that we wanted to do some very specific and targeted outreach
Yes.
to those under
Yes.
outreach
Yeah.
to communities. And I was kind of asking, how's that gonna happen?
Additional time.
Right,
Yeah,
because
that's-
the 2 weeks, that we're talking about, that's gonna go out to the listservs and everybody's connections that they have, but I was hearing that there would be something that was maybe additional, more intense to specific
Can I make
communities.
this?
I wonder how does that happen?
Can I make a suggestion? Either the nominating committee can lead that, or the nominating committee can do that, send suggestions to add to your list for outreach. I'd be happy to, just let me know what you see that where you see there's a need or there's a gap. Let us all know, please filter that out to Kenya if you're willing, and she just adds it to it. That would be one quick and dirty way to do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way.
And that puts you on like the next 2 weeks to get that to me so that we can all go out together.
Yeah, I recommend sending us all an email with a quick request in writing, so we know what exactly, and I'm kind of looking at you to do that as chair, as the person who has identified the gap, right? Okay.
Should we do that as a committee?
Do we know what other gaps there are outside of
Yeah,
the Latino community?
Is there like a matrix that?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
The matrix, sometimes
It leads to what?
Shouldn't,
like plugs in specifically of that outside of overall aspect of a person.
Exactly, yeah, because like
Yeah.
there could be one for like, I guess, race and ethnicity, and also, like, yeah. And
so
maybe we'll work with
should the commission come up with these gaps? Like, what do we think are gaps that we feel are missing, and not just out of solely one person.
I think the nominating committee should look at that, because then you guys
Somebody should.
find out what is saying. Like age, yes, all the isms.
Yeah, so we're on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, and I plan on making this happen, so,
There you go.
Linda and I have been communicating, so we're gonna
Yeah.
do all those things you said and more, so if anybody has any input, they can forward it to me or Kenny or Linda.
I have a
You have
matrix.
I was gonna say they're matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Cool.
can just.
Okay,
And please remember, we need really energetic folks who are gonna do committee work and energetic types that are able to do the work.
And if I can make a suggestion, we
Yes.
also need to have an understanding of what governmental, human rights work is and how that's different from civil rights work.
yeah, I don't know, you have to explain that to me off at a different time. You lost me, but okay.
It's advantageous to have people who understand the infrastructure that we're working to help change the culture they're trying to shift at the city level. There are a lot of governmental institutions and ways of affecting policy change and all of that. How can we bring people in who have some understanding of some aspect of that?
Gotcha.
The matrix idea is exciting. In the past, it reminded me in the past, there was some discussion about creating something that all of the existing commissioners would have to fill out, to kind of identifies what your skill sets are and your connections. We haven't done that. I think DL, you and I said we would help with that.
Yeah.
A lot of boards have this. So maybe, I don't know if you're more interested in that, you could use that as a model and everyone could participate, so you have that on record.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
If I make something like that, would that be something I could just send out via email and people, like if it was like a Google form, and then people could input?
Right.
It could just happen like that, we wouldn't have to vote or anything.
And remember to send it back one at a time, not to everybody.
Well, if it's a Google Doc, then it's, the submissions will occur, and then they're just there, and the submissions are timestamped.
Good.
And then they can be shared amongst everyone, so we can see
And that
what is in the public as well.
Yeah.
In the end, when it's done, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So I think to answer your question, as far as I'm concerned, it seems like you can run with it.
Okay. So I can draft like what questions we'll ask, and then I can just send that out, and then people have any additions, we can make those, and then make the form. Okay.
Then we can get them to the matrix to also find out where we're missing, that will then support said nominations. But that probably is a more than 2 week process.
Yeah, so-
What do you think? Well, getting people to submit maybe.
Yeah.
Oh.
I wasn't all good. I'm here.
But it will serve during their interview process as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gonna, and to me, that deadline is less crucial as the outreach is. 'cause-
Yeah, I mean, so the last time we, sorry to interrupt you, the last time we had interviews, we put out the announcement, we didn't have a lot of return applicants, so, I mean, all that stuff's great, but, you know, I'm the kind of, to me, I'm kind of like, I'm gonna get out there and find people, recruit
Yeah.
people, like, I'm gonna go out and talk to people, I'm gonna go to certain communities, certain organizations, talk to people. I think we have a pretty good understanding just from being in this commission who's not at the table, right? So, and I think Linda and I have talked, so all that other stuff is great. And as we go forward in the next, 2 weeks isn't not like the deadline, it's not set, right? So I'd like to get started in the next 2 weeks to have the announcement out, and as we go forward, when these people turn out or they leave, so hopefully in October, November, that we are able to fill those spots as soon as possible. But at the same time, we're not gonna rush this, right? We're not gonna rush it. We wanna make sure that we take the time to, seek out those individuals that we wanna have at the table, and hopefully get enough applicants that we can have a good pool of candidates to interview. the
I
select
agree
board, so.
with that one piece that you said, but I also would push back on the part where we're saying, I don't think, sitting around this table, we can necessarily say who is missing. I think that we have to prioritize a couple of things that we want in a commission, and then I think that there are things that people bring to this table we don't all know. I think there are other things that we can see that are not on the surface that we went to. So I would say that that form could be, the matrix could be helpful and important in that way.
I think it could happen simultaneously, so
Yeah.
I think, the business as usual to ensure that we fill holes as needed, but we can make certain that we're finding those underlying things that we aren't aware of. And that maybe aren't as apparent outside of,
Indeed, yeah.
Just for the good of the day, we're at
Yeah.
6:50
Yes.
on
Yes.
at this point.
Can policy share? 'Cause-
Policy can share.
Okay, thank you so much. Damon, Kyle, and I had a phone meeting recently and talked about wanting to partner with BMA and OHR around the tax credit program for reentering ex-felons. It's a mouthful. And so I reached out to Judith actually to see if we could have an initial meeting. Judith, you guys probably all know her. She's a senior policy person that works for OEHR. So just to put our minds together and figure out what the next steps might be and how we can partner with one another. And David, of course, is part of the steering committee for BMA as mentioned. So he would be a link there, and then if you would like to be a link as well. I don't know what that partnership might look like. This is just very beginning stages. So that's one area that we would like to focus as a public policy committee. Another area, with the ban in the box, all of the work around that, Damon was articulating that there may be sort of a low-hanging fruit or opportunity to help institutionalize that practice a little bit more by way of city policy. And so if there's any way to help OEHR with that and other community groups who've been working on that for a long time. We did talk a lot about more policy opportunities, I would say, around trafficking. I would say domestic and international. I keep on hearing that the focus is more on international, but I may be remembering incorrectly, but I thought there were some subsequent conversations that resulted in the HTTF focusing on domestic issues as well, because of the I-5 corridor sex trafficking issue being huge, among other justifications that we are Portland Human Rights Commission, we should look at domestic trafficking issues. So there are a couple of, a number of us are meeting with Senator Markley's office staff here in Portland around trafficking, labor and sex trafficking victims issues and programs and potential solutions locally and nationally. This is an exploratory meeting. I am joining the HTTF, not having been an ongoing participant, just as the chair of the Public Policy Committee, to see what opportunities there might be in terms of local policy and legislation at the state and federal levels, if there's any way that we can be aware of what's developing and partner with and support and move the dial. We don't have a particular ask right now for Senator Markley's office, so that's not the purpose of tomorrow's meeting. It's a relationship building, information sharing, mutual exchange of information, I should say, from his staff that are focusing on these issues, and then also HTTF. And then what we were planning to share sort of at the end of that is some legislative ideas we were thinking about floating. One of them is record expungement for prostitution and trafficking victims. Thinking about looking at that locally, and also if there's any movement nationally. It's not an area of policy that I have had a lot of experience in, so I don't know what the national movement is in regards to that. But that is sort of like the number one opportunity that HTTF has identified thus far. So we really want to hear from Berkeley staff what their thoughts are and everything. The other thing has been mentioned in the past, tuition assistance or tuition waiver for those who have been victims of trafficking. And then the third is the creation of, a lot of you are probably familiar with drug courts, but modeling a court for trafficking victims. There's a model in New York that Kyle's really familiar with, and seeing if there's some way to replicate that here. That's later on down, and not as much, something easy to tackle at this point. We want to focus on the pieces that may be more possible at this point in time. There has been some reaching out to Representative Tomei, who's not going to be serving in that role, but reaching out to her and her staff last year about a number of things. She's very interested in child trafficking issues. There hasn't been a lot of follow through, so we're trying to link in with who would be replacing her and see if there's any opportunity to have ongoing conversation about opportunities there. So that's sort of what we have so far. We would love to have more people join us. There are policy issues happening everywhere, and there are individuals I would like to speak with about what you've been working on individually and stuff. There's room for more. I want to clarify, because at the last meeting, the Public Policy Committee was asked to do the whole, to help looking at the conflict of interest issue. The HRC Public Policy Committee is meant to be public policy. We're not an internal policy body. That's more of like HRC and the executive committee can make those kinds of determinations, and OEHR staff. So Kyle and I talked about that. And we're like, the Public Policy Committee doesn't want to be involved in establishing internal policies about how we operate. We're really more externally focused in community and these bigger issues outside of ourselves. I care about how we function internally, but I don't want that to be housed within the Public Policy Committee. So kind of differentiating what the bodies of work would be there. So if you have like, how does the HRC, how does HRC handle this sort of thing? I'm not the holder of all of those answers, unfortunately, but it's something that we, Kenya, others might be better able to address. So.
Thank you. Well, this I feel was one of our better meetings, and I did go on very long, and I apologize for that. But I think the product was better. And I appreciate everyone who helped me with the agenda and helped me with the meeting. I'm not really an executive type, and I appreciate all the pivoting and prompting that went on tonight. And it was Alan who really suggested that I stay on this morning. And so I thought about that a lot, and decided to stay on because this has been the best job that I've ever had in my whole life. So.
Linda, there's one more agenda item on there.
Yes.
There's two.
We have one more piece of public comment.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
You had one more committee report too. So at the sake of time, because I gotta go, so. Did you want to present me with some flowers?
I did, Sam. But actually, these are for Linda. They're probably long overdue, and even though you are staying with us, this is an appreciation for your leadership role that you took to become vice chair, and even the work that you did prior to becoming an HRC. So you've been involved with us for a long time and stepped into a role of leadership, when Sonji was down. So we all appreciate that, and so even though you get to continue to do work with us, those are for you to show the appreciation.
They are gorgeous, and I adore working with each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
And now we can circle back to the other.
And then all the other agenda items. What did I miss?
With public comment. I'm told that public comment is short.
Sorry. Since some of you are new to me anyway, and some of you I've approached privately and publicly about this, I'd like to offer something as part of the Housing Solution Forum. I have been houseless on and off for way more than I care to announce publicly, but I would like to offer a proposition. I think that a lot of what happens for trying to solve housing for the houseless is done by people who haven't experienced it. So I would like to challenge each and every one of you to come out with me for a week. A weekend, I'll settle for a weekend. I know some of you can't dedicate a week, but a weekend, just to come see what it's like.
I want to.
How do we get a hold of you?
You have my email address? You should. It should be on the mailing list.
Okay.
You guys never email me anything.
I'm sending I'm sending Courtney's information out this evening, as she just volunteered to me.
And since you're looking for committee members. All right, I'd love to. Thank you, have a great evening.
Thank you.
CPRC? Okay,
Yes.
so we need, we still need somebody, another human rights commissioner to join the CPRC. Lee?
So, the one thing that I kind of asked about and was looking for was a little bit more information on what each of the groups, what their individual like objectives and goals are, because I feel I have a direct connection to many of them. Every time we talk about policy, my brain is going crazy. CPRC, a few folks have talked to me about it. I just, I'm almost a little bit uncertain of what the difference is with CLEAR and CPRC. So my goal was just to make sure that as I dedicate my time, that I could do it in a way that was respectful to each of the groups. So, does anyone have that? Do you guys know?
Yeah.
If there's like a bit of a summary goal, or at least so I know what, like I understand what policy is going towards, because it's really kind of plain and simple. What?
I would come to the next CPOC meeting and work on it in 2 weeks to kind of get a, to kind of see what we do. And I can talk to you as well. Or Rebecca too, if you want to come. So that's the best way, you know, and then we can talk offline. But I can figure in on what the CPRC is. So
CPRC also has its own brochure.
Yeah, no, I have the brochure right here.
So we are looking for another HRC member. We are down a community member. We're losing a police member. Captain Walsh is leaving to take a job as a chief. So we'll be, you know, filling in those roles, and that's really the only thing. But there's another issue that it's just too much to really get into. So,
Give us the headline though.
well, I've been speaking with Captain Mark Kruger off and on for the last 4 years. And for those, you know, everyone who knows Mark, who Captain Kruger is, I'm sure, by the headline, which I'm not going to use the headline, but so I've been talking to him and trying to find a way to, for him to talk to the community and kind of tell his story and have people open up or ask him questions, and he's open to doing that. He wants to do that. I had suggested him coming here, but I think you know, maybe the CPRC might be a better place to start. So I'm not sure what that looks like, but you know, I've had a conversation, met with him. I don't think he's a anti-Semitic, Jew-hating police officer. That's my personal opinion. That's how I feel. And when my conversation with him, he wants to, I think, heal himself, his family, and the community. But that's, you know, like in the conversations I've had with him, it's got to come from him. Like, you know, people need to hear his words, and he's willing to do that. He wants to do that. So it's just finding the setting that is healthy for everyone, you know, to be able to do that. So, so there'll be more information as that unfolds. So that's about it for the CPRC.
So,
Yes.
is there, just because we brought that up again and you asked me about it again, I really look forward to hopping onto committees as it makes sense, and I don't want to hop on something and be like, I suck at this. Is there
So,
any place where?
I was gonna answer your question. Soji has recently asked us for that, and I forgot what her deadline, I thought her deadline was like Monday, for all committees to present, and I sent ours, and I'm happy to send you a copy of that before September 1st, when we were preparing to bring everyone copies. But yeah, that should be coming to her and then everybody else really soon.
I just remember that I said that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, it should be readily accessible, it should be on the website, we should have a clear layout of what it is we're doing that's public.
Right.
So,
You join the CPRC, we'll give you a free coffee card every month. Just kidding.
But realistically, I was just talking to someone about this, so I look forward to it.
It's something that a lot of us went through when we first joined. It was just kind of disorienting, I understand, and it's hard. And for me, it took me going to meetings to see what's
Right.
going on, what people are working on,
Yeah.
and who they were.
And well, I definitely feel that that's ideal even after, like,
Yeah.
even after a list of things. I just know that I serve on about
Yeah.
7 active boards, so it's,
And-
full time. Like, we all do, not that you're a mother, but you know what I'm saying, like, I know that so it's not realistic for me to do that, it's more realistic for me to decide, and I kind of have thoughts on some, and I can attend those, but, yeah.
And the other thing too is we need people to get involved. So like I'm in the nominating committee and I still don't know how I ended up on the nominating committee. I'm now the chair.
Aren't you the
Yeah,
chair?
I volunteered. But like it wasn't necessarily something I was interested in, but we had a need for it, so I just jumped in and, you know. So
Well, that's what I've historically done, I'm attempting to be a little more thoughtful of what I do.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
whatever
with
works
this-
for you.
Starting with this, I'm forcing myself to be more thoughtful, and forcing, hopefully, to look at what it actually is, so.
Rebecca, suggestion?
The nominating committee is fine.
Okay,
We'll see.
No pressure.
no pressure.
Yeah, I don't feel it.
You can shop around.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say, we had such excellent candidates come on board recently. We're just thrilled that you're here.
Oh, thank you.
We'll be lucky to get a selection like that in the future. We'll see what happens.
Well, we're excited that you're staying, even with the flowers. And there's a card in the flowers, yeah.
Are you joining us?
Yes, we'll adjourn. Thank you for your patience.